Blood spread across the black and white tiles of Castellanos' diner, the one place in Brooklyn where violence was forbidden for 60 years. Until tonight. A woman lay unconscious, struck down by a predator, while an entire room watched in cowardly silence. Then Lucien Moretti, the city's most feared crime boss, walked through the door and saw what they'd allowed to happen. What followed would ignite a war between empires, shatter every rule, and prove that some people are worth burning the entire world down for. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. Rain hammered Brooklyn like God's fist trying to punch through concrete. The kind of storm that sent rats scrambling into subway grates and made even hardened criminals think twice about stepping outside. But Castellanos' diner never closed. Not during hurricanes. Not during blackouts. Not even during the riots of '91 when half the borough went up in flames. The diner stood there on Mercer Street like a stubborn old man refusing to acknowledge his own mortality, wedged between crumbling brick buildings that leaned against each other like drunks sharing secrets. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee, grease, and decades of whispered deals that could get a man killed for listening too closely. Black and white checkered tiles gleamed beneath yellow pendant lights that swung slightly whenever someone slammed the door too hard. Red vinyl booths lined the walls, their cushions cracked and bleeding foam from years of bodies sliding in and out. The counter stretched along the left side, chrome-trimmed and spotless despite its age, with swivel stools that squeaked when you turned. At 11:47 p.m., the diner held an uneasy collection of souls. In the far corner booth sat two off-duty cops nursing coffee. They'd been nursing for an hour, talking in low voices about pension plans and how the department didn't give a damn about veterans anymore. 3 stools down from them perched a lawyer. Everyone knew defended monsters for the right price, his briefcase resting against his leg like a loyal dog. Near the window, a young couple argued in whispers sharp enough to cut glass. Something about money, always about money. And scattered throughout were the regulars, the night shift workers, the insomniacs, the people whose lives only made sense after midnight. Behind the counter moved Serena Vale, 27 years old but carrying the exhaustion of someone twice that. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that never quite stayed neat. Brown eyes that had learned not to make contact unless absolutely necessary. She wore the standard uniform, white button-down shirt, black pants, a stained apron tied around her waist, but she wore it like armor meant to make her invisible. Every movement measured, every step calculated to avoid drawing attention. She'd been working at Castellanos for 5 days. 5 days of keeping her head down, her voice quiet, her presence as minimal as physically possible. She took orders without small talk, delivered food without lingering, cleaned tables like she was apologizing for existing. The other waitresses noticed her the way you notice a stray cat that won't come close enough to pet, with curiosity mixed with pity. What they didn't know was that Serena had perfected invisibility over years of brutal practice. Orphaned at 12 when her parents died in a car accident that left her in the foster system's revolving door of temporary homes and temporary people who never stayed. By 18, she'd learned that being overlooked was safer than being seen. Being quiet was safer than speaking up. Being nothing was safer than being something someone might want to take away. Then she met Nathan Cole, charming, attentive, the kind of man who opened doors and remembered your favorite flower and made you feel like you mattered for the first time in your goddamn life. They married 6 months after meeting. She was 21 and stupid with hope. The first time he hit her was 3 weeks after the wedding. A slap across the face so sudden she didn't process it until her cheek was already burning. He cried afterward, apologized, swore it would never happen again. She believed him because she desperately needed to believe someone could love her without conditions. But it happened again and again and again. Slaps became punches. Punches became worse. Words became weapons sharper than any knife. He controlled everything. Where she went, who she talked to, what she wore, how she spoke. He isolated her from the few friends she had, convinced her that no one else would ever want someone as damaged and worthless as her. Made her believe she deserved every bruise, every scream, every night spent sleeping on the bathroom floor because it was the only door with a lock. 6 years she survived that hell. Then one night, while Nathan passed out drunk after beating her unconscious for burning dinner, Serena made a choice. She took $300 from his wallet, packed a single bag, and walked out of their Philadelphia apartment into a rainstorm not unlike the one hammering Brooklyn tonight. She didn't leave a note. She just ran. Buses and shelters and borrowed couches brought her to New York 2 months ago. The city swallowed her whole the way it swallowed everyone running from something. She found cheap rooms in buildings where landlords didn't ask questions, worked cash-only jobs that didn't require background checks, kept moving, kept hiding. Until she found Castellanos. The owner, an aging Italian man named Sal Castellano, whose grandfather built the place in 1962, hired her on the spot. Didn't ask for references. Didn't care that she couldn't provide a social security number right away. Just looked at her the way you look at someone who's drowning and said, "You start tomorrow." So here she was, 5 days in, trying desperately to blend into the background of a place where blending in was survival. She was refilling coffee for the cops when the door opened. Damian Knox walked in like he owned the oxygen everyone was breathing. Mid-30s. Built like a man who enjoyed hurting people and had gotten very good at it. Expensive leather jacket that didn't quite hide the gun under his left arm. Dark hair slicked back. Face that might have been handsome if cruelty hadn't carved itself into every line. He moved with the swagger of someone who'd never been told no in a way that stuck. Serena recognized predators instantly now. You develop that radar when your survival depended on it. She looked away before he noticed her looking. Too late. Damian slid into a booth near the back, his eyes already locked on her like a wolf spotting something wounded limping through the forest. He didn't bother looking at the menu. Just watched Serena move between tables, his attention heavy enough to feel from across the room. The diner got quieter. That's how these things worked in places like Castellanos. People who knew how to read rooms understood immediately that someone dangerous had entered. The off-duty cops suddenly became very interested in their coffee. The lawyer's hand drifted toward his briefcase. Even the arguing couple stopped mid-sentence. Everyone understood the unspoken rule that had kept Castellanos neutral ground for over 60 years. No violence inside. The diner was Switzerland, a demilitarized zone. Rival crews could sit 3 booths apart and not spill blood because this place was sacred. Sal's grandfather had built that reputation with iron fists and ironclad respect, and 3 generations later, it still held, mostly. Serena approached Damian's table with her order pad, eyes fixed on the paper. "What can I get you?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She hated that, hated how fear leaked through no matter how hard she tried to seal it inside. "Coffee," Damian said. Then, after a pause designed to make her uncomfortable, "And your name?" "Coffee." "Got it." She turned to leave. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to stop her, hard enough to establish control. "I asked your name." His voice remained pleasant, almost friendly. That's what made it terrifying, the politeness wrapped around the threat. Serena's entire body went rigid. Old instincts screamed at her to obey, to submit, to make herself small and apologize and give him whatever he wanted so he'd let go. But she'd run 1,000 miles to escape hands that grabbed her like this. "Serena," she said quietly. "My name's Serena." Damian smiled, released her wrist. "Pretty name for a pretty girl." She walked away without responding, her hands shaking so badly she had to grip the coffee pot with both hands to pour without spilling. Behind the counter, Rosa, the head waitress who'd worked here for 15 years, watched with concern written across her face. "You okay, honey?" Serena nodded, didn't trust her voice. "That's Damian Knox," Rosa whispered. "He's with the DeMarco family. Bad news. Just bring him his coffee and stay clear." Sound advice. Advice Serena followed perfectly for the next 20 minutes. But Damian didn't want coffee. He wanted attention, acknowledgement, the sick thrill of watching someone squirm under his focus. And the more Serena ignored him, the more she avoided his booth, kept her eyes down, treated him like any other customer, the more obsessed he became. It's a particular kind of rage that comes from being denied, especially for men like Damian Knox, who'd spent their entire lives taking whatever they wanted and destroying anyone who said no. Serena's quiet refusal to engage, to flirt, to show fear, to give him anything beyond basic service, it burned him from the inside out. By 12:15 a.m., Damian had finished his coffee and ordered nothing else, just sat there, watching, waiting. The diner had thinned out. Only the cops, the lawyer, and a few scattered insomniacs remained. The rain outside intensified into a full-blown storm, lightning crackling across the sky like broken glass. Serena was clearing a table near the window when Damien finally made his move. "Hey, Serena!" She turned despite every instinct screaming not to. Damien gestured her over with 2 fingers, casual, like summoning a dog. Her feet moved before her brain could stop them. Survival instinct, obey before it gets worse. She reached his booth, order pad clutched like a shield. "Something else I can get you?" "Yeah." Damien leaned back, arms spread across the booth like he was holding court. "You can stop acting like you're too good to talk to me." I'm just working." "Bullshit." His voice hardened. "You've been avoiding me all night, walking past my table like I'm invisible. That's disrespectful." The diner had gone completely silent now. Everyone watching, everyone waiting to see how this played out. "I'm sorry if you feel that way," Serena said carefully. "I treat all the customers the same." "No, you don't." Damien's smile vanished. "I've been watching you. You smile at other people, chat with the regulars. But me? You act like I got the plague. Why's that?" "Because you're a predator," Serena thought. "Because I can smell the violence on you the same way I smelled it on my ex-husband every time he came home drunk and angry. Because I've spent 6 years learning to recognize men like you from across a crowded room." But she couldn't say that. "I don't mean any disrespect," she said instead. "If I made you uncomfortable, I apologize." "Wrong answer." Damien's face darkened. "Uncomfortable? You think you got the power to make me uncomfortable? You're a fucking waitress. I should get back to work." She turned to leave. Damien lunged out of the booth and grabbed her by the hair. The ponytail gave him perfect leverage. He yanked her backward so violently she stumbled, her order pad clattering to the floor. Serena's hands flew up instinctively, not to fight back, but to protect her face from the blow she knew was coming. "You think you can walk away from me?" Damien snarled. The entire diner exploded into frozen silence, the kind of silence that happens right before something terrible and irreversible. One of the cops half rose from his booth. "Hey man, take it easy." Damien's free hand went to the gun under his jacket. Didn't pull it, just rested his palm on the grip. A clear message. The cop sat back down. And that's when Serena understood with crushing clarity that no one was coming to help her. These people, the cops, the lawyer, the regulars who'd smiled at her all week, they would watch her suffer and do absolutely nothing because intervening meant consequences they weren't willing to face. She was alone, just like always. "Please," Serena whispered, "let go." "Say you're sorry." Damien's grip tightened in her hair. "Say it like you fucking mean it." "I'm sorry." Louder. "I'm sorry." "That's better." Damien leaned close enough that she could smell whiskey on his breath. "See how easy that was? All you had to do was show some goddamn respect." Then he shoved her. Not hard, just enough to make his point. Serena stumbled but caught herself on the edge of a table. She should have stayed quiet, should have let it end there. But something inside her, something that had survived Nathan Cole's fists and Philadelphia's streets and every foster home that taught her she was disposable, that something finally broke. Serena straightened, looked Damien directly in the eyes, and spoke in a voice that didn't shake. "Don't touch me again." The diner held its breath. Damien's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, disbelief, and finally, pure rage. "What did you just say to me?" Serena knew she'd made a terrible mistake, could see it in his eyes, in the way his whole body tensed like a spring coiling before release. But she couldn't take the words back now, couldn't unsay them, couldn't return to being invisible and silent and swallowing her dignity just to survive another shift. "I said don't touch me." Her voice cracked but held. "I don't care who you are. You don't put your hands on me." For a moment, Damien just stared at her. Then he laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. It was the laugh of someone who'd just been handed permission to do something they'd been wanting to do all night. "You got some fucking balls," Damien said quietly, "talking to me like that. In front of all these people, making me look weak." "I didn't mean Shut up." He moved faster than she expected. 1 second he was 3 feet away. The next his hand was around her throat, lifting her onto her toes, cutting off her air. Serena clawed at his wrist. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. Black spots danced across her vision. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Rosa shouting, heard chairs scraping, heard someone yelling, "Stop," but not loud enough, not forceful enough, not willing to actually do anything beyond making noise. Damien leaned in close, his breath hot against her face. "You want to embarrass me? I'll show you embarrassing." Then he slammed his fist across her face with enough force to snap her head sideways. The world exploded into white pain. Serena's knees buckled. Damien released her throat, and she collapsed onto the black and white tiles like a puppet with cut strings. Her head cracked against the floor hard enough to bounce. Blood filled her mouth, copper and warm and overwhelming. She tried to push herself up. Couldn't. Her arms wouldn't work. Her vision blurred. Sounds became distant and underwater. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the checkered floor beneath her face, blood spreading across the tiles in a pool that looked black under the yellow lights. The last thing she heard was the rain hammering against the windows like it was trying to break inside. And then nothing. The diner had gone completely silent. 60 years of sacred neutrality shattered in less than 30 seconds. Damien stood over Serena's unconscious body, breathing hard, his knuckles split and bleeding. He looked around the diner, at the cops who wouldn't meet his eyes, at Rosa frozen behind the counter, at the lawyer who'd suddenly become very interested in his briefcase. "Anyone got a problem with what just happened?" Damien's voice carried across the silence. "Anyone?" No one answered, exactly as he expected. He pulled out his wallet, threw 2 20s on the table, and headed for the door. Paused halfway there, turned back to look at Serena's crumpled form one last time. "Respect," he said to no one in particular. "That's all I asked for." Then he pushed through the door into the storm and disappeared into the rain-soaked Brooklyn night. Behind him, the diner remained frozen in horrified silence for exactly 7 seconds. Then Rosa screamed. People rushed forward. The cops finally moved, one of them kneeling beside Serena and checking for a pulse with shaking hands. Someone yelled to call 911. Someone else grabbed napkins to stop the bleeding. But in the chaos and panic and guilt-soaked scrambling, no one noticed the front door opening again. No one heard the rain increase for just a moment as someone stepped inside. No one saw Lucien Moretti walk through the threshold and stop dead, his eyes locked on the pool of blood spreading across his grandfather's diner floor. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of the world holding its breath before a storm that would reshape everything it touched. Lucien Moretti stood 6'2" with the kind of presence that made rooms rearrange themselves around him. Tailored charcoal suit despite the late hour. Dark hair perfectly styled. Face that could have belonged to a Wall Street executive if not for the coldness in his gray eyes. The kind of cold that came from making decisions most people couldn't stomach before breakfast. He was 33 years old and controlled half of Brooklyn's underground through a combination of brutal efficiency and his family's legacy stretching back 3 generations. The Moretti name carried weight that bent cops, politicians, and rival crews alike. People whispered it with respect, with fear, with the understanding that crossing the Morettis meant consequences that ended careers, families, and lives. But right now, Lucien wasn't thinking about any of that. He was staring at this blood on his grandfather's floor, at the unconscious woman surrounded by people who'd done nothing to stop this, at the violation of the one sacred rule that had protected this place since before he was born. His face showed nothing, not anger, not shock, nothing. That's what made it terrifying. Rosa recognized him instantly, started crying harder. "Mr. Moretti, I'm so sorry. We tried to stop him. He just..." "Who?" One word. Quiet. Sharp as a blade sliding between ribs. Damien Knox. He's with the DeMarcos. He attacked her and then he left." Lucien's eyes never left Serena's unconscious form. "How long ago?" Maybe 2 minutes. He went toward..." Lucien was already moving. He crossed the diner in 4 strides, pushed through the door into the rain, and pulled out his phone. Made one call. Didn't say hello, just spoke 3 sentences. "Damien Knox, DeMarco family. Find him." Then he hung up and walked back inside. The diner watched him with the collective nervousness of people who knew they'd failed a test they didn't know they were taking. Lucien ignored them. Crossed to where Serena lay surrounded by napkins soaking up blood, knelt down beside her with the kind of careful precision you'd use approaching something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Up close, he could see the damage clearly. Split lip bleeding freely. Bruise already forming across her left cheekbone in violent shades of purple and red. Shallow breathing. Eyes moving rapidly beneath closed lids like she was trying to escape even while unconscious. But what struck him wasn't the visible injuries. It was the way she'd curled into herself defensively, the way her hands were positioned protecting her face and ribs, the way her entire body language screamed of someone who'd been hurt like this before and learned exactly how to minimize the damage. Something cold and sharp twisted in Lucien's chest. He'd seen plenty of violence in his life, ordered most of it, but this felt different. This felt like something ugly and cowardly that violated rules deeper than any criminal code. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," one of the cops said nervously. Lucien didn't acknowledge him, just carefully, so carefully, brushed a strand of blood-matted hair away from Serena's face. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, disoriented, terrified. She saw Lucien's face hovering over hers and panic exploded behind her eyes. She tried to scramble backward, couldn't coordinate her limbs, just thrashed weakly like a bird with a broken wing. "No, please, I'm sorry, please don't." The words came out slurred and desperate, begging. The sound of someone who'd apologized for existing so many times it became reflex. Lucien went completely still. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." But Serena wasn't hearing him, wasn't seeing him. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere dark, where hands meant pain and voices meant danger and survival, meant making yourself small enough to disappear. "Please, Nathan, I didn't mean to. Please don't hit me again." Nathan. Lucien filed that name away for later. "Listen to me." He kept his voice low, steady, the same tone you'd use with a spooked animal. "My name is Lucien. You're at Castellano's diner. An ambulance is coming. No one is going to hurt you." Serena's eyes tried to focus, failed. Tears cut clean tracks through the blood on her face. I just wanted... She couldn't finish the sentence, just collapsed back onto the tiles, unconscious again. The ambulance arrived exactly 90 seconds later. Lucien stood aside while the paramedics worked, watching with an expression that revealed nothing while his mind calculated consequences and responses and the exact shape of the retribution that would follow this. One of the paramedics, a woman in her 40s who'd clearly seen too much horror to be shocked by more, glanced up at him while checking Serena's vitals. "You family?" "No." "Then you can't ride with us." Lucien pulled out his wallet, showed her a card that made her face go carefully neutral. "I'll be following behind." She didn't argue. They loaded Serena onto a stretcher with practiced efficiency, strapping her down and hooking up an IV while calling vital signs to each other in medical shorthand. Lucien watched it all with the focus of someone memorizing details for later use. As they wheeled her toward the door, Rosa approached Lucien nervously. "Mr. Moretti, I'm so sorry this happened. Your grandfather, if he knew someone broke the rules..." "My grandfather is dead," Lucien said flatly. "The rules died with him." He followed the ambulance into the storm, rain soaking through his expensive suit while his mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles, preparing responses, building the framework of what would come next. Because Damien Knox had made a critical mistake tonight. He'd spilled blood in Castellano's diner, and Lucien Moretti was about to teach everyone what happened when you broke sacred ground. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Lucien sat in a plastic chair outside the emergency room, water from his soaked suit pooling on the linoleum beneath his feet. 2:30 a.m. and the place buzzed with the usual late-night chaos. Gunshot wounds, overdoses, domestic violence cases wheeled past on gurneys while exhausted nurses moved between rooms like ghosts on an assembly line of human suffering. He didn't move. Didn't check his phone despite it vibrating every 30 seconds. Just sat there with his hands clasped between his knees, staring at nothing while his mind worked through the mathematics of retribution. 20 minutes later, a doctor emerged. Young, Indian, tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You're here for Serena Vale?" Lucien stood. "How is she?" Not a question. A demand. The doctor hesitated, clearly trying to figure out Lucien's relationship to the patient and whether sharing information violated some privacy law he'd get sued over later. Then he looked at Lucien's face, really looked, and decided some rules weren't worth dying over. Concussion, fractured cheekbone, split lip requiring 4 stitches, severe bruising to the throat consistent with strangulation. She's stable, but we're keeping her overnight for observation. He paused. This wasn't an accident. No. Does she have family we should contact? No. The doctor waited for elaboration, received none, shifted uncomfortably. The police will want to speak with her when she wakes up. They can wait. Lucien's tone suggested this wasn't negotiable. Sir, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. Lucien pulled out his wallet again, removed a different card this time. Business card. Heavy stock. Simple black text on white background with a phone number and nothing else. He handed it to the doctor. If anyone asks questions about her condition, you call this number first, understand? The doctor looked at the card. His face went carefully blank. Understood. What room? 314, but visiting hours? Lucien was already walking away. He found the room easily enough. Private. Quiet. The kind you got when someone made a phone call and hospital administrators suddenly remembered they valued their funding sources. Inside, Serena lay in the adjustable bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped softly in the darkness. An IV drip fed clear liquid into her left arm. Her face had been cleaned of blood, revealing the full extent of the damage, swollen, discolored, a roadmap of violence written in bruises. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with the 1,000-yard stare of someone whose body was present but mind had fled somewhere safer. She didn't acknowledge Lucien when he entered, didn't move, just kept breathing in shallow, measured breaths like she was rationing oxygen. Lucien pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed, sat down, waited. 30 seconds of silence stretched between them. Then Serena spoke without looking at him. Her voice came out rough, damaged from the strangulation. You should leave. Why? Because I'm bad luck. Everyone who gets close to me. She stopped, swallowed painfully. Just go. Lucien leaned back in the chair, completely relaxed despite the late hour and the blood still on his cufflinks. I've been shot at 16 times in my life, stabbed twice, survived 3 attempts to poison me and 1 very creative car bomb. I don't believe in luck, just consequences. That got her attention. She turned her head slowly, wincing at the movement, and looked at him properly for the first time. Recognition flickered behind her eyes, not of his face, but of his type. Dangerous, powerful. The kind of man who made problems disappear. Who are you? Not really asking. More like confirming a suspicion. Lucien Moretti. Understanding washed over her features. Even someone as disconnected from Brooklyn's underworld as Serena had heard that name, had heard the stories. The Moretti family didn't just run businesses. They ran entire neighborhoods, controlled shipping routes, construction contracts, union votes. Police commissioners returned their calls. Judges remembered their campaign contributions. Fear should have followed that understanding. Instead, Serena just looked tired. Then you definitely should leave. I can't afford enemies like the ones you have. You already have them. Damien Knox made sure of that. She flinched at the name, closed her eyes. I should have kept my mouth shut. Should have just... Her voice cracked. I know how to survive men like him. I've done it before. I got tired of swallowing it. Swallowing what? Everything. The fear. The humiliation. Pretending it doesn't destroy you piece by piece until there's nothing left but this. She gestured vaguely at herself, at the hospital room, at the entire situation. This pathetic mess who can't even work a waitress job without getting her skull cracked open. Lucien studied her in the dim light. Most people confronted with violence either collapsed into victimhood or inflated with righteous anger. Serena did neither. She just stated facts with the detached clarity of someone who'd stopped being surprised by how cruel the world could be. Tell me about Nathan. He said it casually, like they were discussing weather. Serena's whole body went rigid. How do you... You said his name in the diner before you passed out. I don't want to talk about Nathan. Then don't talk. Just listen. Lucien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Damien Knox assaulted you in my grandfather's establishment, violated 60 years of neutrality, made everyone in that room complicit through their silence. That means he disrespected me, my family, and everything we've built in this city. So now I have a choice. I can let it slide, show weakness, invite more challenges, watch my empire crack from the inside out. Or I can respond proportionally. Send a message that restores order. Proportionally, Serena's laugh came out bitter and broken. That's a nice word for what you people do to each other. You people? Criminals, gangsters, men who think violence solves everything. It doesn't solve everything, Lucien agreed, but it solves some things very effectively. Serena turned away again, staring back at the ceiling. I just want to disappear, find another city, another job, another... She stopped, took a shaky breath. I'm good at disappearing. I know. That brought her eyes back to him, suspicious now. What's that supposed to mean? It means you move like someone who's been running for years, someone who's learned to take up as little space as possible, someone who apologizes for existing. Lucien's voice remained neutral, factual. Nathan taught you that, didn't he? The monitors beeped faster as Serena's heart rate spiked. Stop. How long were you married to him? I said stop. 6 years, 7? Long enough that you started believing everything he told you about yourself. That you were worthless, damaged, that no one else would ever... Shut up! Serena tried to sit up, gasped in pain, fell back against the pillows. Tears cut down her face. You don't know anything about me, about what I survived. You don't get to analyze me like I'm some broken thing you can fix. Lucien didn't react to the outburst, just waited while she cried, harsh, angry sobs that shook her whole frame and made the monitors scream warnings about elevated vitals. A nurse poked her head in, saw Lucien, and quietly backed out. When Serena finally ran out of tears, her voice came out raw and defeated. Nathan was my husband, past tense. I left him 2 months ago, took $300 and ran. He doesn't know where I am, and I plan to keep it that way. Happy? No. She blinked at him. What? I'm not happy about any of this. About what Damien did to you. About whatever Nathan did before that. About the fact that you think disappearing is the only solution. Lucien stood, straightened his jacket. But I'm going to fix the parts I can fix, starting with Knox. Don't. Serena's voice carried sudden urgency. Don't go after him because of me. I'm not worth starting a war over. This isn't about worth. It's about rules. Rules, she laughed again, hollow and sharp. Men like you don't follow rules. You make them up as you go and break them when it's convenient. You're wrong. Lucien headed for the door, paused with his hand on the frame. My grandfather built Castellano's Diner as neutral ground in 1962. During the height of the Brooklyn Wars, when bodies dropped every night and the streets ran with blood, he made it sacred, a place where violence stopped, where enemies could sit across from each other and remember they were human before they were soldiers. That rule kept people alive for 60 years, kept families intact, gave this city one small corner where mercy mattered more than territory. He looked back at her. Damien Knox pissed on that legacy tonight, so no, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because if I let him walk away, the rule dies completely. And without that rule, we're just animals tearing each other apart until nothing's left but corpses and ashes. Serena stared at him. You really believe that? I have to believe something. Otherwise, this life doesn't make any goddamn sense. He left before she could respond. The hallway outside stretched empty and fluorescent. Lucien pulled out his phone and checked the messages he'd been ignoring. 37 in total. Most from his underboss Marco asking for instructions. 2 from his sister Angela demanding to know where he was. 1 from his lawyer reminding him about a meeting tomorrow afternoon that Lucien had already forgotten about. And 1 from an unknown number. Found him. Sending location now. A second message followed immediately. GPS coordinates. An address in Red Hook, Warehouse District. Lucien made 3 calls on his way to the elevator, first to Marco. Get everyone ready. Full crew. Red Hook Warehouse District. I'll send the exact address. Marco's voice came back tense, excited. We moving on the DeMarcos? Not yet. Just one of theirs. Knox? Yes. About fucking time. Marco's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting for permission to unleash violence. He's been talking shit for months, disrespecting the family. This thing at the diner, everyone's going to hear about it by morning. We don't respond hard. We look weak. We'll respond, but controlled. Precision. Not a war. Not yet. Understood. When? Now. Lucien hung up. Second call went to his head of security. Brief, direct. I need a property. Manhattan. Secure, private, full security. No paper trail. How fast can you arrange it? By tomorrow morning, if you're not picky about location. I'm not. Do it. Third call to his sister Angela. She answered on the first ring despite the ungodly hour, her voice sharp with worry and irritation in equal measure. Where the hell are you? Marco's been blowing up my phone saying you went dark. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. You sound like you're about to do something stupid. Lucien stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor. Define stupid. Anything that gets you killed or arrested. Anything that starts a war we're not ready for. Anything that makes me regret convincing Dad to leave you in charge before he died. Their father's death 3 years ago had shifted everything. Heart attack. Sudden. Left Lucien inheriting an empire he'd been groomed for but never expected to actually run this early. Angela, older by 2 years, smarter by several degrees, but born the wrong gender in a business where tradition mattered more than talent, had stepped aside gracefully, became his consigliere. The voice of reason when Lucien's instincts leaned toward fire instead of calculation. She was usually right. Someone broke the rule at Castellanos, Lucien said quietly. Silence on the other end, then, fuck. Yeah. Who? Damian Knox, DeMarco Crew. Double fuck. Angela's mind was already racing through implications. You can't let that stand. But if you hit him, Vincent DeMarco takes it as a declaration. I don't care what Vincent takes it as. Lucien. He beat a woman unconscious in grandfather's diner, in front of witnesses, made everyone watch, made them complicit. His voice stayed level, but something cold leaked through underneath. I let that slide. We're done. Every crew in Brooklyn will test us. Every punk with ambition will think the Morettis went soft. Angela sighed. I know, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying be smart about it. Knox is connected. He's Vincent's nephew, for Christ's sake. You touch him, you better kill him. And even then, I'm not killing him tonight. That surprised her into silence. I'm sending a message, Lucien continued, clear enough that everyone understands the price of disrespect. Vague enough that Vincent can't justify open war. Something that restores the balance without tipping the whole city into chaos. And what message is that? The elevator doors opened. Lucien stepped into the lobby where rain still hammered against the windows like it wanted inside. That Castellanos diner is sacred ground, and sacred ground has guardians. He hung up before Angela could argue. Outside, his car waited. Black Mercedes, bulletproof glass. Marco behind the wheel and 2 more soldiers in the back seat. They straightened when Lucien slid into the passenger seat, water dripping from his clothes. Marco glanced at him. You good? Drive. They drove. Red Hook at 3 a.m. looked like the end of the world had started but given up halfway through. Industrial wasteland. Abandoned warehouses with broken windows like missing teeth. Shipping containers stacked like rusted tombs. The kind of place where people went when they wanted to do things that couldn't happen in daylight. The address led them to a warehouse at the edge of the waterfront. Old, brick, graffiti covering every available surface in layers of territorial markings and artistic despair. 2 cars parked outside. Both expensive. Both out of place in this neighborhood. Marco killed the engine 3 blocks away. They approached on foot through the rain, 4 men moving through shadows with the practiced silence of predators who'd hunted together before. Inside the warehouse, voices echoed. Lucien paused outside a side entrance, listening. Damian Knox's voice carried clearly, loud, drunk, telling some story about the diner to an audience that laughed at the right moments, bragging, making himself the hero of his own narrative. Marco looked at Lucien, waiting for the signal. Lucien pulled out his phone, sent a text. 30 seconds later, the warehouse's front entrance exploded inward with a crash of splintering wood, and the rest of his crew poured inside. 8 men armed with baseball bats and tire irons and controlled fury. The laughter died instantly. Lucien walked through the side entrance while chaos erupted in the main space. Damien's crew scrambled, reaching for weapons, shouting questions, trying to process the sudden invasion. Marco and the others moved like a well-oiled machine, disarming, subduing, breaking bones only when necessary to establish dominance. It was over in 90 seconds. Damien Knox found himself on his knees in the center of the warehouse floor, surrounded by Lucien's men while his own crew lay groaning in various states of consciousness around him. Blood ran from his nose where someone had hit him with something heavy. His earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that he'd miscalculated badly. Lucien approached slowly, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. Damien Knox. Moretti, listen, this is a misunderstanding. Is it? Lucien stopped 3 feet away. Explain the misunderstanding. The diner. That bitch disrespected me. She needed to learn. Marco stepped forward and backhanded Damien so hard his head snapped sideways. Blood and teeth hit the concrete. Try again, Lucien suggested, without calling her a bitch. Damien spat blood. His eyes darted between the men surrounding him, calculating odds and finding nothing good. The waitress, she was rude. I was teaching her manners. I didn't know, I forgot about the rule. You forgot. Yes, I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Lucien crouched down until they were eye level. You're right. It won't. Because you're going to do 3 things. First, you're going to leave New York. Tonight. Permanently. Second, you're going to tell Vincent DeMarco that you violated sacred ground and the Morettis showed mercy by not killing you. Third, he pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket, handed it to Damien. You're going to write a check for $50,000 to this domestic violence shelter in Queens. Right now. Damien stared at the paper, then at Lucien. You're fucking joking. Do I look like I'm joking? Vincent will never let me just leave. Vincent will be thrilled you're alive to leave. Because if you stay in this city one more day, I'll kill you and everyone you've ever cared about, starting with your mother. The warehouse went dead silent. Damien's face cycled through several emotions, defiance, disbelief, rage, before landing on fear. Because everyone knew Lucien Moretti didn't make empty threats. If he said he'd kill your mother, he'd already located her address and planned the execution down to which flowers would be at the funeral. You can't, my family. Your family will bury you and move on. That's what families do. But Serena Vale. Lucien's voice dropped to something quiet and lethal. She doesn't have family, doesn't have protection, just a dead-end job in a diner trying to survive one more day without someone like you destroying what little peace she's managed to find. So yes, Damien, I can absolutely kill your mother, and I will. Unless you do exactly what I tell you. Marco produced a pen and checkbook retrieved from Damien's jacket, held them out. Damien's hands shook as he took them. This is insane. Write. He wrote. The check came out sloppy but legible. $50,000 made out to the Queens Domestic Violence Resource Center. Damien signed it with hands that trembled hard enough to smudge the ink. Lucien took the check, examined it, folded it carefully into his inside pocket. You have 6 hours to leave the city. If I see you again, if I hear your name again, if you so much as send a postcard from wherever you end up. He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Damien nodded frantically, blood and spit running down his chin. I'm gone. I swear, you'll never see me again. Good. Lucien stood, looked at Marco. Make sure he gets to his car. They dragged Damien to his feet and hauled him toward the exit. The rest of his crew followed, limping and groaning, leaving trails of blood on the warehouse floor. When they were gone, the space fell quiet, except for rain hammering the metal roof. One of Lucien's men, a scarred veteran named Paulie, who'd worked for the family since Lucien's father ran things, stepped forward. Boss, you sure about letting him walk? He's connected. Vincent might see this as weakness. Vincent will see it as restraint, a demonstration that we follow the rules even when punishing those who break them. Lucien headed for the exit. Besides, I didn't let him walk. I exiled him. There's a difference. And if he doesn't stay gone, then we'll revisit the conversation permanently. They left the warehouse and returned to the Mercedes. Marco drove in silence for 3 blocks before speaking. The girl, from the diner, She means something to you? Lucien watched rain streak across the window. She's under protection now. Make sure everyone knows. Everyone meaning everyone. Our crews, the other families, every hustler and street soldier in Brooklyn. Serena Vale is off limits. Anyone touches her, they answer to me personally. Marco whistled low. That's going to raise questions. Let it. They drove back through the sleeping city while dawn threatened on the horizon. Lucien's phone buzzed with messages. Angela demanding details, Vincent DeMarco's underboss requesting a sit-down, 3 different lieutenants asking for clarification on orders. He ignored them all. Instead, he thought about Serena lying in that hospital bed. The way she'd looked at him with zero hope, like she'd used up her lifetime supply of trust and found nothing but betrayal at the bottom of that well. He understood that feeling, understood it better than she could possibly know. 4 a.m. brought them back to the hospital. Lucien went straight to room 314, expecting to find Serena asleep. She wasn't. She sat in the chair by the window, hospital gown hanging loose on her frame, staring out at the city while the monitors beside her empty bed beeped in protest at her absent vitals. She'd removed the IV herself, a bandage taped sloppily over the puncture wound in her arm. She didn't turn when Lucien entered, just kept staring at the rain. They said you left. Her voice sounded hollow. Said you had business to handle. I did. Did it involve breaking someone's bones? Damien Knox won't be a problem anymore. That got her attention. She turned slowly, wincing at the movement, her face a patchwork of bruises in the dim light. What did you do? Sent him on an extended vacation, permanent. You killed him. No, I let him live, with conditions. Serena searched his face for the lie. Found none. Why? Because killing him would have started a war I'm not ready to fight yet. And because... Lucien stopped, considered his next words carefully. Because you asked me not to. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the rain began to ease. Dawn light crept across the skyline in shades of gray and gold. I don't understand you, Serena said finally. You're a criminal, a murderer probably. You hurt people for a living. But you... She gestured vaguely. You sat with me, protected me, went after someone who hurt me even though I'm nobody. Why? Not nobody. I'm a waitress who got her face smashed in. That's the definition of nobody in this city. Lucien crossed to the window, stood beside her without crowding her space. When I was 16, I watched my uncle beat my aunt to death in their kitchen. Took him 45 minutes. The whole family was there for Sunday dinner. We all heard her screaming. And we all sat at that table finishing our meal because in our world, you don't interfere in another man's marriage, no matter what. Serena looked at him, really looked. My father found her body later that night. My uncle was passed out drunk on their couch. And you know what my father did? Lucien's voice stayed flat, factual. Nothing. Told the cops it was an accident, a fall down the stairs. Everyone nodded and agreed, and my uncle walked free because family protects family. Even the monsters. That's evil. I know. But that's the world I grew up in, where violence against women gets excused, explained away, treated like a private matter instead of a crime. He finally looked at her. So when I walked into that diner tonight and saw you bleeding on the floor while a room full of people pretended they didn't see it, I recognized that silence, that complicity. And I decided it ends with me. Serena's eyes filled with tears. I still don't understand why you care. Because someone should, and everyone else chose not to. The monitors beeped steadily in the background. The rain stopped completely. Morning light flooded the room in soft gold. Serena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you have a choice. You can disappear like you planned. Find another city, another job, keep running from ghosts, or... Lucien pulled out a key card from his jacket, set it on the window ledge. You can stay in a property I control, secure, private, no rent, no questions. Just a safe place while you figure out what comes next. She stared at the key like it might explode. I can't accept that. Why not? Because accepting help from men like you, it always comes with strings. Always. What strings? I don't know yet, but there will be. There's always a price. Lucien picked up the key, held it out to her. The only price is that you survive, that you stop running long enough to remember you're allowed to exist without apologizing for it, that you take one goddamn moment to breathe without looking over your shoulder. Serena's hand trembled as she reached for the key, stopped halfway. What if I take this and then decide to leave anyway? Then you leave. The key still works. The place stays yours as long as you need it. And if I stay, you stay. And no one touches you. Not Damian Knox, not Nathan Cole, not anyone in this city who thinks they can hurt you without consequences. She took the key, held it like it was made of glass, like it might shatter and cut her hands. I don't trust you, she whispered. She checked. Good. Don't. Trust is earned, but you can trust that I keep my promises, and I promise you'll be safe in that apartment. Serena closed her fist around the key, looked out at the city waking up beyond the window. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll try. I'll stay, for now, until I figure out... She stopped, took a shaky breath. Until I figure out who I am when I'm not running. Lucien nodded, started for the door. Wait. He turned back. Serena stood there in her hospital gown, holding the key, looking smaller and more fragile than anyone had a right to look while still standing. But her eyes carried something that hadn't been there before. Not hope exactly, but maybe the faintest possibility that hope could exist again someday. Thank you, she said quietly, for not letting him get away with it. Lucien held her gaze for a long moment. Thank me by surviving. That's all I want. He left before she could see the lie in that statement, because surviving wasn't all he wanted anymore. He wanted her safe, wanted her healing, wanted her to look at him someday without fear, and that want terrified him more than any bullet or blade ever had, because Lucien Moretti had built his entire life on control, on discipline, on never letting emotion compromise strategy. But standing in that hospital room watching Serena hold a key like it was the first real thing anyone had ever given her. Control felt like a lie he'd been telling himself for far too long. The sun rose over Brooklyn. Somewhere across the city, Damian Knox packed a bag with shaking hands and booked a one-way ticket to Miami. Somewhere in Queens, a domestic violence shelter received an unexpected $50,000 donation that would change hundreds of lives. And somewhere in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, an empty apartment waited for a woman who'd spent 6 years learning to disappear. But the story, the real story, was just beginning. Because violence has consequences, and mercy has a price. And Lucien Moretti was about to learn that protecting someone meant more than keeping them alive. It meant teaching them how to live again, even if that meant tearing down every wall he'd ever built around his own scarred heart. The Manhattan penthouse sat 37 floors above the city, like a fortress built from glass and steel and money that didn't ask questions. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park to the north and the glittering chaos of Midtown to the south. Hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine. Furniture that cost more than most people earned in a year. Everything clean, modern, impersonal, the kind of place designed for people who valued security over warmth. Serena stood in the middle of the living room 3 days after leaving the hospital, holding a single duffel bag containing everything she owned, and felt like an intruder in someone else's life. The bruises on her face had deepened into spectacular shades of purple and yellow. The stitches in her lip pulled when she talked. Her ribs ached with every breath. But the physical damage was healing faster than the psychological wreckage that came with it. She'd spent the first night sitting on the edge of the king-sized bed, fully clothed, watching the door, waiting for it to open, waiting for Lucien to walk in and explain what he really wanted, what price she'd actually have to pay for safety. The door never opened. The second night, she managed 4 hours of sleep interrupted by nightmares where Damian's face morphed into Nathan's and back again, both of them laughing while she bled on checkered tiles that stretched to infinity. By the third day, she'd started to believe, cautiously, tentatively, that maybe Lucien had meant what he said. Maybe there were no strings. Maybe she could actually breathe here. The thought terrified her more than any threat ever had. Because hope was dangerous. Hope made you vulnerable. Hope set you up for the fall that would hurt worse than any fist. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach clenched instinctively. Then she saw the message. Security delivered groceries. Fridges stocked. Don't worry about paying me back. L. No demand, no expectation, just information. Serena walked to the kitchen, all granite counters and stainless steel appliances that looked like they'd never been used, and opened the refrigerator. It was packed, fresh vegetables, fruit, milk, eggs, bread, coffee. Real food, not the cheap processed garbage she'd been living on for months. Something inside her chest cracked open. She sat down on the kitchen floor and cried for 20 minutes straight. Not from pain, not from fear. From the overwhelming disorientation of being treated like she mattered by someone who had absolutely no reason to care. When the tears finally stopped, she pulled herself together, washed her face, and did something she hadn't done in years. She cooked herself dinner, nothing fancy. Just scrambled eggs and toast. But she took her time, cracked the eggs carefully, buttered the bread, set a plate at the dining table overlooking the city, and sat down and ate slowly, tasting every bite, feeling the simple normalcy of it settle into her bones. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Serena felt almost human. That feeling lasted exactly 4 more days. On the 8th day in the penthouse, Serena woke up at 6 a.m. to her phone buzzing incessantly. Not a call. Messages. Dozens of them flooding in from a number she didn't recognize but somehow knew with sick certainty. Her hands shook as she opened the first one. I found you. 3 words. That's all it took to shatter everything. The second message came through while she stared at the first. Did you really think you could hide from me, Serena? Did you think running to New York would save you? Third message. A photo this time. Of the penthouse building, taken from street level. Recent. She could see today's date stamped in the corner. Fourth message. Nice place. Way above your pay grade. Who are you fucking to afford this? The phone slipped from her hands and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Nathan. Nathan had found her. Panic slammed into Serena like a freight train. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps that wouldn't fill her lungs. Black spots danced across her vision. The room spun. How? How did he find her? She'd been so careful. No social media, no contact with anyone from Philadelphia, cash-only transactions. Burner phone. Then she remembered. The online order. 2 days ago, she'd ordered books from a website using an old email account, an account she'd shared with Nathan during their marriage, an account that still had their old shared credit card attached, an account that auto-populated her new delivery address. One moment of carelessness. That's all it took. Her phone buzzed again. She scrambled to pick it up with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I'm downstairs. The words punched through her like a bullet. No. No. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not in the one place she'd started to feel safe. Serena ran to the window and looked down 37 floors to the street below. Couldn't see details from this height, just cars and people moving like ants. Any one of them could be Nathan. Her phone buzzed. Building security is tight. Impressive. But I've got time. I can wait. Or you could just come down and we can talk like adults. Your choice, baby. Baby. He used to call her that. Before the hitting started, before the screaming, before the nights when she'd lock herself in the bathroom and pray he'd pass out before breaking down the door. Another message. Or maybe I'll just introduce myself to your new boyfriend, Lucien Moretti, right? That's whose place this is. I did my research. Powerful guy. Dangerous guy. Does he know what a worthless lying whore you really are? Does he know you're still married? Serena's legs gave out. She collapsed against the window, sliding down until she sat on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest, phone clutched in shaking hands. Still married. Technically true. She'd run before filing for divorce. Too afraid Nathan would contest it. Too broke to afford a lawyer. Too desperate to get away to worry about paperwork. But Lucien didn't know that. Didn't know she was legally bound to the man who'd spent 6 years destroying her piece by piece. Another message. 5 minutes? Then I'm calling him myself. I've got his number, found it online, public record. Amazing what you can learn when you actually try. Serena's mind raced. Options. She needed options. Call the police. And say what? That her estranged husband was standing outside a building where she lived in an apartment that belonged to a known crime boss? That would go great. Call Lucien and admit she'd lied by omission about her marriage? Admit she'd brought this danger right to his doorstep? Or just run. Again, always running. Her phone rang, actual call this time. Unknown number. She answered before she could stop herself. Nathan. There's my girl. His voice poured through the speaker like poison, smooth, warm. The voice that had once made her feel loved before she learned it was just another weapon. I've missed you, Serena. 6 years together and you just vanish? That hurt. Really hurt. How did you find me? Her voice came out broken. Does it matter? I found you. That's what's important. And now we're going to fix this. Fix us. You're going to come home where you belong. I'm not going anywhere with you. Nathan's laugh carried an edge sharp enough to cut. See, that's where you're wrong. You are coming home. Because if you don't, I'm going to make your life here very, very difficult. I'll camp outside this building, follow you everywhere, make scenes, tell everyone who'll listen that you're my wife, that you ran out on our marriage, that you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. $300 from my wallet. That's theft. I could press charges. Have you arrested? Imagine explaining that to your new boyfriend, or his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. I could just tell Mr. Moretti some truths about you, about what a crazy, unstable, lying bitch you are, how you manipulated him, used him, how you're probably just waiting for the right moment to steal from him too. That's not… Nathan, please. Please, what? Please leave you alone so you can play house with some gangster who'll throw you away the second he gets bored. Come on, Serena, you're not that stupid. Men like Lucien Moretti don't protect girls like you out of kindness. They do it because they want something. And when he's done taking what he wants, where does that leave you? Serena pressed her forehead against her knees. What do you want? I want my wife back. I'm not your wife anymore. Actually, you are. Legally. Until death do us part, remember? You said those vows, made those promises, and I'm here to collect. He paused. Let the silence stretch. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come downstairs, we're going to talk, and then you're going to pack your things and come home to Philadelphia with me, where you belong. And if I don't, then I make this entire city a living hell for you, starting with a very interesting phone call to Lucien Moretti explaining exactly who and what you are. The line went dead. Serena sat there on the floor, phone in her lap, staring at nothing while her mind spiraled through every nightmare scenario. Nathan downstairs. Nathan following her. Nathan destroying the fragile peace she'd barely started to build. She could hide, lock the door, refuse to come down. But Nathan was patient. Nathan would wait. And eventually, she'd have to leave. For groceries, for work, for anything. And he'd be there. Or worse, he'd follow through on his threat and contact Lucien. Serena imagined that conversation. Nathan spinning lies, telling twisted versions of their marriage where she was the villain and he was the victim. And why would Lucien believe her over Nathan? What evidence did she have? What proof that she was the one telling the truth? She had nothing, just bruises that had mostly faded and a story that sounded pathetic even to her own ears. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucien. Security called. Someone's been asking about you at the front desk. Want me to handle it? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could tell him, could explain everything, could throw herself on his mercy and hope he believed her, or she could handle it herself. Go downstairs, face Nathan, end this before it destroyed everything. Serena stood on shaking legs, walked to the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror. The bruises had faded but not disappeared. Evidence of what happened when she stood up to violent men. Evidence of what she could expect if she faced Nathan alone. But what choice did she have? She couldn't let him poison Lucien against her. Couldn't let him destroy the one safe place she'd found in years. Couldn't let him win by hiding. She texted Lucien back. No, it's fine. Just someone from my old life. I'll handle it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Lucien typing. Then, you sure? Yes. The dots appeared again. Disappeared, reappeared. Finally, okay, but I'm 5 minutes away if you need me. Just call. Serena didn't respond. Just put on jeans and a sweatshirt, armor of normalcy, and took the elevator down 37 floors while her heart tried to punch through her ribcage. The lobby gleamed with marble and modern art, and security guards who watched everyone with the practiced suspicion of people paid to notice threats. One of them, A broad-shouldered man in his 50s stepped forward as Serena exited the elevator. "Miss Vale, there's a man outside asking for you. We told him to leave, but he's being persistent. Want us to call the police?" "No, I'll talk to him." The guard's expression said he thought that was a bad idea, but he stepped aside. Serena walked through the glass doors into the morning sunlight and saw Nathan leaning against a lamppost across the street like he'd been waiting there all night. He looked exactly the same. 6'1", athletic build maintained through obsessive gym routines, brown hair styled perfectly, handsome face that had once made her heart skip, dressed in expensive casual clothes, designer jeans, leather jacket, sunglasses hiding his eyes. He saw her and smiled. That smile had once made her feel special. Now it made her skin crawl. Serena crossed the street on legs that wanted to run in the opposite direction, stopped 10 feet away, far enough that he couldn't grab her without closing distance, close enough that they could talk without shouting. "Serena!" Nathan pushed off the lamppost, spread his arms like he expected a hug. "God, you look terrible. What happened to your face?" "What do you want, Nathan?" "I told you. I want you to come home. Philadelphia isn't my home anymore." "Because you're living in some crime lord's penthouse now? That's your big plan? Trading one bad situation for another?" He took a step closer. She took a step back. His smile tightened. "Come on. Don't be like that. I came all this way. Least you can do is have a conversation with me." "We're having one. A real conversation, without you looking at me like I'm some kind of monster." "You are a monster, Nathan. You beat me. For years. You made me feel worthless. You destroyed every piece of self-respect I had until I couldn't recognize myself anymore. You are exactly the monster I'm looking at you like." Nathan's face darkened, the mask slipping. "I made mistakes. I know that. I've been going to therapy, working on myself. I'm different now. You've had 2 months. 2 months doesn't fix 6 years of abuse." "So what, you're just writing me off? Throwing away our marriage without even trying to make it work?" "There's nothing to make work. I don't love you. I don't want to be with you. I want you to sign divorce papers and leave me alone." Nathan laughed, sharp and ugly. "Divorce papers, right, because that's so easy. You think I'm just going to let you walk away? Let you embarrass me? Make me look like some wife-beating piece of shit to everyone back home? You are a wife-beating piece of shit." The words hung in the air between them. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. Old reflex. Serena saw it, and her body responded automatically, shoulders hunching, head ducking, preparing for the blow. But Nathan didn't swing. He took a breath, unclenched his fists, put his hands in his pockets, smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "You're right, I am, and I'm sorry for that, truly. But Serena..." His voice shifted, softer, more reasonable. The voice he used when he wanted to manipulate instead of intimidate. "Think about this rationally. You can't stay here. You can't build a life with a criminal. He's using you, and when he's done, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no husband. You'll be right back where you started, alone. I'd rather be alone than with you." "Would you, though?" Nathan tilted his head, studying her. "Because from where I'm standing, you look terrified. You look like someone who's been running so long she forgot how to stop. And I'm offering you a way out. Come home. We'll get counseling. Work through our issues. I'll be better, I promise." "Your promises mean nothing to me." "They used to mean something." That was before I realized they were lies. Nathan's jaw tightened. "Fine. You want to do this the hard way? Let's do it the hard way. I'm not leaving New York. I'm going to be right here, every day, outside this building, outside wherever you work, following you, watching you, making sure everyone knows you're married, making sure Lucien Moretti knows exactly what kind of woman he's protecting." "He already knows. Does he know you're still legally my wife? Does he know you stole from me? Does he know about the times you hit me back? The times you screamed and threw things and acted just as crazy as I did?" Nathan stepped closer. She couldn't retreat anymore. Her back was against a parked car. "Because I can tell him all that. I can tell everyone. Paint a very different picture of our marriage. Make you the villain. Who do you think they'll believe, Serena? The successful businessman whose wife abandoned him? Or the broke waitress shacking up with a mobster?" Serena's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Why are you doing this? Because you're mine. You'll always be mine. And I don't let go of what's mine. A car door slammed. Both of them turned. Lucien Moretti stood 15 feet away beside a black Mercedes, his expression carved from ice and barely contained violence. Serena's stomach dropped through the pavement. Nathan's face cycled through surprise, recognition, and then calculated charm. He stepped back from Serena, hands out in a placating gesture. Mr. Moretti, I've heard a lot about you. I'm Nathan Cole, Serena's husband. The word husband landed like a bomb. Lucien's eyes flicked to Serena. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if he was angry or disappointed or just done with all of this. Husband. Lucien said it flatly. Statement, not question. Nathan smiled, sensing an advantage. Yes. 6 years married. I know Serena probably didn't mention that. She has a habit of leaving out important details when it suits her. Nathan, Serena started, it's okay, baby. Mr. Moretti deserves to know the truth. About us. About why you ran. About the fact that you're still legally my wife and… Are you threatening her? Lucien's voice cut through Nathan's speech like a blade through flesh. Nathan blinked. What? No, I'm just trying to talk to my wife. Are you threatening her? Lucien repeated. Quieter this time. More dangerous. I don't know what she told you, but… Lucien closed the distance between them in 3 strides. Nathan stumbled backward, suddenly aware he'd miscalculated badly. Lucien didn't touch him, didn't need to. His presence alone radiated enough controlled violence to make grown men reconsider their life choices. I'm going to say this once. Lucien's voice stayed level, conversational. You're going to leave. Right now. You're going to go back to Philadelphia or wherever the hell you came from, and you're never going to contact Serena again. Not by phone, not by text, not by showing up outside buildings she lives in. You're going to disappear from her life completely. Understand? Nathan tried to maintain his composure. Failed. You can't tell me what to do. She's my wife. She's not your anything. Not anymore. Lucien stepped closer. Nathan pressed back against the car. You put your hands on her, hurt her, made her feel like she had to run 1,000 miles just to breathe. That makes you less than nothing to me. Less than the dirt I scrape off my shoes. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away. And if I ever see you again, if I ever hear you contacted her again, if your name ever crosses my desk in any context… He paused. Let the implications settle. I'll make sure they never find your body. Nathan's face went white. You're crazy. No, I'm very sane, very focused, and very serious. Ask anyone in this city what happens to people who cross me. Ask what happens to men who hurt women under my protection. Then ask yourself if you really want to test whether I'm bluffing. Silence stretched between them. Serena watched it all unfold like a car crash in slow motion. Part of her felt vindicated watching Nathan finally face someone who wouldn't tolerate his bullshit. Part of her felt terrified of what this meant, what consequences would follow. Nathan looked at Serena, then at Lucien, then back at Serena. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is. Lucien didn't blink. Walk away. Now. For a moment, Nathan looked like he might push back, might try to reclaim some dignity. Then survival instinct overrode ego, and he turned and walked toward a car parked down the block, got in, sat there for 10 seconds staring straight ahead. Then he drove away. Serena exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Lucien turned to her. His expression hadn't changed, still cold, still unreadable. Inside. Not a request. Serena followed him into the building, through the lobby where security guards suddenly became very interested in their computer screens, into the elevator. They rode up 37 floors in silence so thick she could barely breathe through it. The elevator doors opened. Lucien walked into the penthouse. Serena followed. The door clicked shut behind them with the finality of a prison cell locking. Lucien stood by the windows looking out at the city, hands in his pockets. Back to her. You're married. 2 words, no accusation in his tone, just fact. Technically, legally, but not. Serena's voice cracked. Not in any way that matters. I left him. I ran. I'm never going back. When were you going to tell me? I don't know. It didn't seem important. Lucien turned. His face carried no anger. That's what made it terrifying. Just cold assessment, like he was reevaluating every interaction they'd had through a new lens. Didn't seem important that you're legally bound to a man who clearly wants you back, that he has every right to contest any protection I offer you, that he can make claims, legal claims, that complicate everything. His voice stayed level. That didn't seem worth mentioning. I was afraid. Of what? Of this. Of you looking at me like, she gestured at his face, like I'm a liability, like I'm more trouble than I'm worth, like maybe Nathan's right and I'm just using you. Are you? The question hit like a slap. No, God, no, I'm not using you. I'm just trying to survive. That's all I've ever been trying to do. Survive one more day without someone destroying me. And when you offered help, I took it because I was desperate and terrified, and for the first time in years, someone actually gave a damn whether I lived or died. Lucien crossed to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, drank it in one swallow, poured another. Nathan Cole. He said the name like he was tasting it, testing it. Tell me about him. So Serena did. She told him everything. Meeting Nathan at 21, the whirlwind romance, the wedding 6 months later, the first slap 3 weeks after that, the escalation, the isolation, the years of abuse that broke her down piece by piece until she couldn't remember who she'd been before him. She told him about the night she finally ran, about the 2 months of hiding before finding Castellanos, about the email account mistake that had given Nathan her new address. She left nothing out. When she finished, Lucien stood silent for a long time, just staring into his glass like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. Why didn't you file for divorce? Or, I couldn't afford a lawyer, and I was afraid if I filed, Nathan would contest it, would find me through the paperwork, would... She stopped. I know it was stupid. I know I should have handled it properly, but I was just trying to stay alive and moving and invisible. Legal paperwork felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Lucien set down his glass. He's not going to leave you alone. I know. Men like Nathan, men who view women as property, they don't just walk away because someone threatens them. They stew, they plan, they come back. I know. So what do you want me to do about it? Serena looked at him, really looked, trying to see past the cold exterior to whatever was underneath. I don't know. I don't know what I'm allowed to ask for. I don't know what you're willing to do. I don't even know why you care enough to... Stop. Lucien crossed to her, stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, far enough not to crowd her. I need you to understand something. When I offered you protection, it wasn't conditional. It wasn't dependent on you being perfect or honest or anything other than alive. You're under my protection. That means Nathan Cole doesn't touch you, doesn't threaten you, doesn't exist in your life anymore. You can't just make him disappear. I can absolutely make him disappear. The certainty in his voice made her blood run cold. I don't want you to kill him. Why not? Because then I become the reason someone died. I become complicit in murder. And I've spent 6 years trying not to become the monster Nathan said I was. Lucien studied her. You think protecting yourself makes you a monster. I think asking you to kill someone for me does. You didn't ask. I offered. It's the same thing. It's really not. Lucien moved to the window, looked down at the city. But fine. I won't kill him. I'll handle it another way. What way? Leave that to me. Lucien. Serena. He turned back. His expression had softened slightly. Not much, but enough. You need to decide something right now. Either you trust me to handle this, or you don't. If you don't, that's fine. I'll arrange somewhere else for you to stay, somewhere Nathan can't find you. Give you money to start over. No strings, no judgment. And if I do trust you, then you stay here. Let me deal with Nathan, and we figure out how to untangle your marriage legally so he has no claim on you anymore. Serena felt tears burning behind her eyes. Why are you doing this? Really? I need to know, because I can't let myself believe someone actually cares if it's not real. I can't survive that kind of hope turning into another lie. Lucien walked over to her, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to move away if she wanted. She didn't. He stopped close enough that she could see the gray flecks in his eyes, close enough to feel the heat coming off him, close enough that if either of them reached out, they'd touch. You want to know why I care? His voice dropped to something quieter, something that felt like truth under all the layers of armor he wore. Because when I saw you bleeding on that diner floor, I saw my aunt, the one my uncle beat to death while my whole family pretended not to notice. And I swore if I ever had the power to stop it from happening again, I would, no matter what it cost. I'm not your aunt. No, you're not. You're someone who survived something that should have killed you, who ran instead of giving up, who stood up to Damien Knox even though it terrified you, who keeps breathing even when the world gives you every reason to stop. That's not weakness, Serena. That's the strongest goddamn thing I've ever seen. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Lucien reached up slowly, giving her time to flinch away, and brushed them away with his thumb. So yes, I care. And no, it's not a lie. And I'm going to protect you whether you trust me or not. But it would be easier if you did. Serena closed her eyes, felt his hand still against her face, felt the impossible gentleness of it from a man who made his living through violence. I trust you, she whispered. When she opened her eyes, Lucien was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite name, something between relief and fear, like he'd just committed to something irrevocable and wasn't sure if he'd survive it. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, made a call. Angela, I need you to find me the best divorce lawyer in New York. Family law specialist, aggressive, willing to fight dirty. He paused, listened. Because we're dissolving a marriage and I need it done yesterday. Another pause. I'll explain later, just find them. He hung up, looked at Serena. We're going to fix this, legally, properly. Nathan Cole will sign those divorce papers whether he wants to or not. And if he doesn't, Lucien's smile carried zero warmth. Then I'll get very creative about convincing him. But one way or another, Serena, he held her gaze. You're going to be free of him. Serena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that freedom was actually possible. But she'd learned through 6 years of brutal education that men made promises they had no intention of keeping. And Nathan Cole had promised he'd never let her go, which meant one of them was lying. And she had a terrible feeling she'd find out which one the hard way. Somewhere across the city, Nathan Cole sat in a rented hotel room staring at his phone, at the photos he'd taken of the penthouse building, of Serena, of Lucien Moretti. He'd done his research, knew exactly who Lucien was, what he was capable of, the bodies attached to his name. But Nathan Cole had spent 6 years conditioning Serena to believe she was worthless, had spent 6 years making her think no one would ever want her, had spent 6 years building her entire identity around being his property, and he'd be damned if some crime boss was going to undo all that work. So he made a phone call. Vincent DeMarco's office. How can I help you? Nathan smiled. Tell Mr. DeMarco I have information about Lucien Moretti he'd find very interesting. Information about a weakness, a vulnerability. A pause. Hold, please. 90 seconds later, a different voice came on the line. Older, rougher, carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of calculated violence. This is Vincent DeMarco. Who am I speaking with? Someone who can help you hurt Lucien Moretti where it counts. I'm listening. Nathan's smile widened. And 3 miles away in a Manhattan penthouse, Serena stood by the window watching the city lights twinkle like stars that didn't know they were already dead. She had no idea that the worst was yet to come. That Nathan had just lit a fuse that would burn everything she'd built to ashes. That the choice she'd made to trust Lucien Moretti was about to cost both of them more than either could afford to pay. The city breathed below her, millions of people living their lives. And somewhere in that chaos, forces were already moving. Pieces arranging themselves on a board she couldn't see. A game she didn't know she was playing. With stakes she wouldn't understand until it was far too late to change the outcome. 3 weeks passed like holding your breath underwater. Serena spent the first week waiting for Nathan to reappear. Watching the street from the penthouse windows, jumping at every unexpected sound. Her phone stayed on silent, but she checked it compulsively, expecting threats that never came. The second week brought a different kind of anxiety. Lucien's lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Caroline Park, who looked like she ate hostile witnesses for breakfast, filed divorce papers citing abandonment, abuse, and irreconcilable differences. Had them served to Nathan's Philadelphia address. Nathan had 30 days to respond. By the third week, Serena started believing maybe it was actually over. Maybe Lucien's threat had worked. Maybe Nathan had finally accepted defeat and moved on. She should have known better. On day 22, Serena returned to Castellano's diner for the first time since the attack. Not to work. Sal had told her to take all the time she needed, but to prove to herself that she could walk through those doors without falling apart. The diner looked exactly the same. Black and white tiles, red vinyl booze, yellow pendant lights swinging gently overhead. But it felt different now. The ghosts of that night lingered in the corners where people had watched her bleed and done nothing. Rosa saw her first, rushed over with tears already streaming down her face. Serena, oh honey, I'm so sorry. We should have done something. We should have stopped him. It's okay. It's not okay. We were cowards, all of us. We just sat there. Rosa. Serena took her hands, squeezed. It's over. I'm okay. That's what matters. But she wasn't okay. Not really. Just better at pretending. She stayed for an hour, drank coffee, talked with the other waitresses who apologized with their eyes even when words failed them. Sal himself emerged from the kitchen, a bear of a man in his 70s with hands scarred from decades of cooking, and hugged her so tight she couldn't breathe. You need anything, he said gruffly. Anything at all. You call me. Understand? Serena nodded against his shoulder. When she finally left, the sun was setting behind the Brooklyn rooftops in shades of orange and purple that looked almost peaceful. She walked toward the subway station 3 blocks away, hands in her jacket pockets, lost in thought. She didn't notice the car following her, didn't see the 3 men who'd been waiting outside the diner for exactly this moment, didn't realize she'd made a critical mistake until someone grabbed her from behind and a hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off her scream before it could escape. They dragged her into an alley in less than 5 seconds. Fast, professional, practiced. Serena thrashed, trying to remember the self-defense techniques she'd watched on YouTube, but her body forgot everything under the surge of pure terror. One man held her arms, another kept his hand over her mouth. The third stood in front of her holding a phone up like he was recording. Stop fighting. The one with the phone spoke calmly, almost bored. We're not here to hurt you, just delivering a message. Serena's eyes went wide, tried to scream against the hand covering her mouth, only managed muffled sounds that wouldn't carry past the alley. Lucien Moretti thinks he can protect you, thinks putting you in a fancy apartment makes you untouchable. The man tilted his head. He's wrong. You're a loose end, a weakness, and we don't like weaknesses. He stepped closer, close enough that Serena could see the tattoo on his neck, some kind of family crest she didn't recognize. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop seeing Lucien, stop living in his property, stop being his problem. You're going to disappear the way you're good at disappearing. And if you don't, he turned the phone around, showing her the screen. Photos of the penthouse building, of Serena leaving Castellano's earlier, of her walking down the street completely unaware she was being watched. We know where you sleep, where you eat, where you go. And next time we won't be so polite about delivering messages. Understand? Serena couldn't nod with the hand over her mouth, could barely breathe. The man with the phone smiled. Good talk. Then they let her go. Just released her and walked away like they'd been discussing weather instead of threats. Serena collapsed against the alley wall, gasping for air, her whole body shaking so violently she thought she might actually fall apart. They didn't hurt her, didn't need to. The message was clear enough. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Called Lucien. He answered before the second ring. Serena. They grabbed me. The words tumbled out in a rush. 3 men, outside Castellano's. They said I'm a weakness and I need to leave you alone, or they'll... She couldn't finish. Just sobbed into the phone while pedestrians walked past the alley entrance, oblivious to the girl breaking down 10 feet away. Where are you? Lucien's voice went cold and sharp. She told him. Don't move. I'm coming. He arrived in 7 minutes. The Mercedes screeched to a stop at the alley entrance, and Lucien was out and running before the engine even stopped. He found Serena huddled against the wall, arms wrapped around herself, face streaked with tears and snot and the ugly reality of fear. He knelt beside her, didn't touch her, just positioned himself between her and the street like a human shield. Did they hurt you? She shook her head. Did you see their faces? Yes, one had a tattoo on his neck, some kind of, I don't know, crest or symbol. Lucien's jaw tightened. DeMarco family crest. The name hit Serena like ice water. The same family that Damien Knox belonged to. Yes. Lucien stood, pulled out his phone, made a call. Marco, 3 DeMarco soldiers just grabbed Serena outside Castellanos. I want every camera feed in a 6-block radius. I want their faces, names, addresses, and I want Vincent DeMarco to know I'm coming for a conversation. He paused. No, not tomorrow. Tonight. He hung up, looked down at Serena. Can you stand? She nodded. Let him help her up. Her legs felt like water, but she forced them to hold. This is my fault, she said quietly. I should have stayed in the apartment. Should have been more careful. This is not your fault. This is Vincent DeMarco testing boundaries. Seeing if he can intimidate you into running so I lose face. Lucien's expression could have cut glass. He miscalculated? What are you going to do? End this, one way or another. The drive back to this penthouse happened in silence. Lucien made phone calls in rapid Italian, giving orders, demanding information, his voice carrying the cold authority of someone who'd stopped asking permission years ago. Inside the apartment, Lucien poured himself a drink, downed it, poured another. Serena stood by the window watching her reflection in the glass. They want me gone. Maybe I should just… No. You didn't let me finish, You were going to say you should leave. Disappear. Save me the trouble of protecting you. Lucien set down his glass hard enough that it cracked. The answer is no. This is going to start a war. This already is a war. Has been since Damien Knox broke the rule at Castellanos. Vincent DeMarco thinks he can use you to make me back down, make me look weak, but he doesn't understand. Lucien turned to face her. I don't back down. Not when someone threatens what's mine. I'm not yours. You're under my protection. That makes you mine. And anyone who touches you is signing their own death warrant. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it sparked something else, something dangerous that had been building for weeks beneath the surface of gratitude and trust. Why? Serena's voice came out barely above a whisper. Why does it matter this much? I'm nobody. A waitress with a traumatic past and an ex-husband who won't let go. Why risk everything for me? Lucien crossed the room, stopped close enough that she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of decisions that kept him awake at night. Because I'm tired of watching men like Vincent DeMarco and Nathan Cole and every other predator in this city hurt people weaker than them and face no consequences. I'm tired of being part of a system that enables that violence. And I'm tired… His voice dropped. I'm tired of pretending I don't care what happens to you. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them had acknowledged until this moment. Lucien, you asked me once why I care. I told you it was about rules, about my aunt, about doing the right thing for once in my goddamn life. He stepped closer. I lied. Those things matter, but the truth is simpler. I care because when I look at you, I see someone who survived hell and came out the other side still capable of kindness, still capable of trusting despite every reason not to, still capable of being human when this world gives you every excuse to become something else. Serena felt tears burning. I'm not as good as you think I am. You're better than I'll ever be, and that's why… He stopped, turned away. That's why I need you to stay in the apartment tonight. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Understand? Where are you going? To have a conversation with Vincent DeMarco. That's not a conversation. That's a death sentence. For one of us, maybe. Lucien headed for the door, paused with his hand on the frame. If something happens to me, if I don't come back, there's an envelope in the top drawer of my desk. Instructions, money, contacts who'll help you disappear properly. Start over somewhere safe. Lucien, don't… Promise me you'll open it if I don't come back. Serena wanted to argue, wanted to scream that he couldn't just walk into a war zone and expect her to sit here waiting like some helpless damsel. But the look in his eyes stopped her. I promise. He nodded, started to leave. Lucien! He turned back. Serena crossed the distance between them before she could second-guess herself, rose on her toes, kissed him, It was brief, desperate, tasted like fear and whiskey, and everything neither of them had been brave enough to say out loud. When she pulled back, Lucien stared at her like she'd just rewritten every equation he'd spent his life solving. "Don't die," Serena whispered. "Please, I can't survive losing someone else. She couldn't finish, couldn't say the word, couldn't admit what she'd been feeling for weeks. Lucien cupped her face in his hands, gentle despite the violence those same hands were capable of. "I'll come back," he said. "I promise." Then he was gone. The door clicked shut, and Serena was alone in a penthouse 37 floors above a city about to explode. Vincent DeMarco's estate sat in Staten Island like a fortress pretending to be a home. 10-foot walls, security cameras, guards who carried automatic weapons under expensive suits. The kind of place designed to make visitors understand exactly how much power lived inside. Lucien arrived at midnight with Marco and 4 other soldiers. They were stopped at the gate by 2 guards who looked like they bench-pressed small cars for cardio. "Mr. Moretti, we weren't expecting you." "Tell Vincent I'm here to discuss his men putting hands on someone under my protection." The guard spoke into his radio. 30 seconds of tense silence. Then the gate swung open. They drove up a curved driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges and stopped in front of a massive colonial-style house that screamed new money trying to look old. More guards waited at the entrance. They patted down Lucien and his men, confiscated weapons, led them inside. The interior looked like a museum designed by someone who'd never been to one. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably cost more than most people's houses. Everything expensive, nothing warm. Vincent DeMarco waited in a study lined with leather-bound books that had never been read. He sat behind a desk the size of a small boat, smoking a cigar, looking exactly like what he was, a man in his 60s who'd spent 4 decades clawing his way to power and had no intention of relinquishing it. Lucien Moretti. Vincent didn't stand, didn't offer a handshake, just gestured to the chair across from him. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" Lucien remained standing. "Your men grabbed Serena Vale outside Castellano's diner tonight, threatened her, told her to stop seeing me or face consequences." Vincent took a long drag on his cigar, exhaled smoke slowly. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence. They had your family crest tattooed on their necks." "A lot of people have tattoos these days. Doesn't mean they work for me." The lie hung between them, transparent, deliberate. Lucien stepped closer to the desk. Marco and the others fanned out behind him. Vincent's guards tensed but didn't move. "Let me be very clear. Serena Vale is under my protection. That means she's off limits, untouchable. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. Anyone who hurts her starts a war they won't survive. Understand?" Vincent smiled, set down his cigar. "I understand you've gotten attached to some girl, some nobody waitress who probably doesn't even realize she's being used as a pawn in games she can't comprehend. What I don't understand is why you're willing to risk everything for her." "That's my business." "It becomes my business when your weakness affects the balance of power in this city." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "You embarrassed my nephew, sent him running from New York with his tail between his legs. That made me look weak, made people think the DeMarcos could be pushed around without consequences." "Damien violated sacred ground." "Sacred ground," Vincent laughed. "Your grandfather's precious rule. You know what that rule was, Lucien? A leash. A way for the Morettis to control everyone else by pretending to be civilized. But your grandfather's dead. The old ways are dead. And I'm done pretending this city isn't a battlefield." "Then you're declaring war." "I'm declaring the truth. This city belongs to whoever's strong enough to take it. And right now you're showing weakness, protecting some damaged girl, making emotional decisions. That's not leadership. That's liability." Lucien's hands clenched into fists. Marco stepped forward, ready to intervene if this turned violent. "Serena stays under my protection," Lucien said quietly. "Non-negotiable." "Then we have a problem." Vincent stood, walked around the desk, stopped 5 feet from Lucien. "Because I can't let your weakness become my exposure. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to end whatever this thing is with the girl. Send her away. Show everyone you're still the cold, calculating leader we all respect. Or," he paused, I'll end it for you. Is that a threat? It's a professional observation. Girls like Serena Vale, they're vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities get exploited. So either you cut her loose or someone else will. And when that happens, the blood will be on your hands for not protecting her the only way that actually works, which is letting her go. The room fell silent. Both men stared at each other across 5 feet of expensive carpet, each waiting for the other to blink first. No, Lucien said finally. Vincent's expression hardened. Then you're choosing her over your empire. I'm choosing to do what's right over what's easy, something you've never understood. What's right? Vincent's laugh came out bitter. You really believe that? You think protecting one broken girl makes up for all the blood on your hands? All the lives you've destroyed building your little kingdom? No, but it's a start. It's suicide. Vincent walked back to his desk, sat down, picked up his cigar. Leave my house, Lucien, before I forget we're supposed to be civilized. Lucien turned to go, stopped at the door. Vincent, if anyone, and I mean anyone, touches Serena again, I won't come here for a conversation. I'll come with fire. And when the smoke clears, your entire organization will be ashes. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Duly noted. Vincent didn't look up from his cigar. Give my regards to your girlfriend, while she's still breathing. They left the estate with more guards watching than had been there when they arrived, got into the Mercedes, drove in tense silence until they were 3 blocks away. Then Marco spoke. That went well. Shut up. I'm just saying, threatening Vincent DeMarco in his own house. That's bold. Stupid, but bold. Lucien stared out the window at the Staten Island streets rolling past. He's not going to back down. No, he's going to escalate, probably soon. Marco glanced at him. You sure the girl's worth it? Don't call her the girl. Serena, whatever. You sure she's worth starting a war over? Lucien thought about Serena sitting in that penthouse waiting for him. Thought about the way she'd kissed him, like he was the last solid thing in a world made of quicksand. Thought about the fear in her eyes when she talked about Nathan, the resilience beneath the trauma. Yeah, he said quietly. She is. Then we're going to need more men, more guns, and a hell of a plan. They drove back to Brooklyn while Lucien made phone calls mobilizing resources. By the time they reached the penthouse, he had 20 soldiers on standby and 3 different safe houses identified in case evacuation became necessary. He took the elevator up alone, unlocked the door expecting to find Serena asleep. Instead, she sat on the couch fully dressed, eyes red from crying, holding her phone like it was a live grenade. What happened? Serena looked up. Her face was a mask of devastation. Nathan called 10 minutes ago. Lucien's blood went cold. What did he say? That he knows I'm living here, that he's been working with the DeMarcos, that they're planning something for tomorrow night. Her voice shook. He said if I don't come back to him, they're going to kill you, and it'll be my fault because I should have just stayed away in the first place. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Nathan had gone to Vincent, offered information, created an alliance based on mutual hatred of Lucien Moretti. Son of a bitch! Lucien pulled out his phone, called Marco. Get everyone to Castellanos, now. DeMarcos are planning something. I don't know what, but... Boss. Marco's voice came back tense. You need to see this. See what? Turn on the news, Channel 7. Lucien grabbed the TV remote, flipped to Channel 7. A news anchor stood in front of Castellano's diner. Behind her, the building was engulfed in flames. Fire trucks surrounded it. Firefighters sprayed water that seemed to do nothing against the inferno consuming 60 years of history. The anchor's voice cut through the shock. Officials say the fire started around midnight. No casualties reported as the diner was closed, but investigators suspect arson. The owner, Sal Castellano, told reporters this historic establishment has been a Brooklyn landmark for over 6 decades. Lucien's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Vincent DeMarco's voice poured through the speaker. That's what happens to sacred ground when it's not properly protected. Tomorrow night, we're coming for your other sacred places. Starting with the girl. Sleep well, Lucien. The line went dead. Serena stared at the TV screen where Castellano's diner, the place where they'd met, where she'd been attacked, where everything had started, burned like a funeral pyre for the old ways. They're going to kill me, she whispered. To hurt you. Lucien turned off the TV, crossed to her, pulled her to her feet. Listen to me. Tomorrow night, you're going to stay here, locked in, with Marco and 10 armed guards between you and anyone who tries to get through that door. Understand? What are you going to do? I'm going to end this, one way or another. By doing what? By giving Vincent DeMarco exactly what he wants. A war. Lucien's expression was carved from stone. And when it's over, either he's dead or I am. But you... He gripped her shoulders gently. You're going to survive. That's non-negotiable. I don't want to survive if you're dead. The words hung between them. Lucien pulled her close, held her like she was the only real thing in a world made of smoke and mirrors. Then I guess I better not die. Outside the windows, sirens wailed as more fire trucks raced toward the burning diner. The city glowed orange and red against the night sky. And somewhere in the chaos, forces were mobilizing for a confrontation that would reshape Brooklyn's criminal landscape forever. Lucien held Serena and made calculations in his head. Men, weapons, strategies, weaknesses to exploit, strengths to leverage. He'd spent his entire life preparing for war, but he'd never had something worth losing before. That changed everything. And as the diner burned and the city held its breath, Lucien Moretti made a decision that would define the rest of his life, however long that turned out to be. He would protect Serena Vale, even if it cost him everything, even if it meant becoming the monster he'd spent years pretending he wasn't, even if it meant burning the entire city down around them, because some things were worth fighting for, and she was one of them. The night stretched on. The fire burned itself out around 3 a.m., leaving nothing but blackened walls and the ghost of what had been. Serena fell asleep on the couch around 4, exhausted from fear and adrenaline crashes. Lucien sat by the window watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and blood. Tomorrow night would bring violence, death, the end of one world and the beginning of another. He was ready, or at least he told himself he was, because ready or not, the war was coming. And there was no turning back now. The day before the war felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the ground crumble beneath your feet. Serena woke up on this couch with sunlight burning through the penthouse windows, and Lucien standing by the glass, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian that sounded like orders being given to soldiers preparing for battle. He'd been making calls for hours. She could tell by the exhaustion carved into his face, the coffee cup abandoned on the side table, the tension radiating from his shoulders. When he finally hung up, he turned and saw her awake. Something flickered across his expression, relief mixed with regret, like he was glad she was alive, but sorry she had to be alive for this. How long have you been up? Serena asked. Didn't sleep. Lucien, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. He crossed to her, knelt down so they were eye level. Tonight, the DeMarcos are coming. I don't know when exactly. I don't know how many, but they're coming. And when they do, this apartment becomes a war zone. Serena's stomach clenched. Then we leave. Run. Disappear. Boy, running doesn't solve this. Vincent won't stop. Nathan won't stop. They'll hunt us across the country if they have to. The only way this ends is if we end it, permanently. His gray eyes held hers. I'm going to kill Vincent DeMarco tonight. And probably die trying. But before that happens, I need to make sure you're safe. I don't want to be safe if you're dead. That's not your choice to make. The words came out harsher than he intended. Serena flinched. Lucien's expression softened immediately, and he reached out, cupped her face gently. I'm sorry. I can't think straight knowing they're going to come for you. That every second you're breathing is another second Vincent can take you away from. He stopped, took a breath. Marco's bringing a team, 10 men, best soldiers I have. They're going to fortify this apartment, guard you, and no matter what happens out there, you stay inside, locked in, until it's over. And if you don't come back, then Marco has instructions to get you out of the city, out of the country if necessary. New identity, new life, everything you need to disappear properly this time. Serena felt tears burning. I don't want a new life without you in it. Lucien pulled her close, pressed his forehead against hers. For a long moment they just breathed together, holding on to each other like drowning people clinging to wreckage. If I could change what I am, he whispered. If I could be someone who didn't bring violence to everyone I touch, I'd do it for you, in a heartbeat. I don't want you to change. I just want you alive. I know. I'm going to try. Marco arrived an hour later with enough firepower to start a small revolution. Serena watched from the bedroom doorway as men she didn't recognize transformed the penthouse into a fortress, reinforced the door, positioned themselves at strategic points, checked weapons with the casual efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times before. Marco himself, broad-shouldered, scarred, loyal to Lucien in a way that transcended employment, found Serena in the bedroom and spoke quietly. Boss told me to keep you safe. That's what I'm going to do, no matter what. His voice carried absolute certainty. You stay in this apartment. Don't open the door for anyone but Lucien or me. If shooting starts, you get in the bathtub. Porcelain stops bullets better than drywall. Understand? Serena nodded numbly. Good. We're going to get through this. Lucien's the smartest, most dangerous son of a bitch I've ever known. If anyone can end Vincent DeMarco and walk away, it's him. But Marco's eyes told a different story. He thought Lucien was going to die tonight. They all did. By evening, the apartment had settled into tense silence. Guards positioned, weapons loaded, everyone waiting for violence that felt inevitable as sunrise. Lucien found Serena standing by the bedroom window, watching the city lights flicker on across Manhattan. He approached slowly, giving her space to turn away if she wanted. She didn't. I need to go soon, he said quietly. I know. There's something I need to tell you first. Something I should have said weeks ago. Serena turned to face him. His expression carried the raw vulnerability of someone who'd spent their entire life hiding behind armor and had finally decided to take it off. When I saw you bleeding on that diner floor, something broke open inside me. Something I'd kept locked down for years because feeling anything in this life is dangerous. It makes you weak, makes you vulnerable, makes you... He stopped, started again. I told myself I was protecting you because it was the right thing to do. Because of my aunt. Because of rules and honor and all the bullshit justifications I could create. But the truth is simpler and more terrifying. What truth? I'm in love with you. The words landed like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward, changing everything. I love you, Lucien continued. I love your strength, your resilience, the way you keep getting up no matter how many times this world knocks you down. I love that you see the monster I am and somehow still look at me like I'm worth saving. And I love... His voice cracked. I love that for the first time in my entire goddamn life, I feel like maybe I'm more than just the violence I was born into. Serena's tears fell freely now. Lucien, I know the timing is shit. I know telling you this right before I walk into a fight I might not survive is selfish. But I needed you to know. Needed you to understand that if I die tonight, I die for something that actually matters. For someone who makes this brutal, bloody life feel like it might have been worth living after all. Serena closed the distance between them, kissed him with all the desperation and fear and love she'd been holding back for weeks. He kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. Don't die, she whispered against his lips. Please, I can't lose you. Not when I just found someone who makes me feel human again. I'll fight like hell to come back to you. That's all I can promise. Then promise me something else. Anything. Promise that if you do come back, if we both survive this, we'll leave. Together. Walk away from all of this. Build something new somewhere the past can't follow us. Lucien pulled back slightly, searched her face. You'd do that? Leave everything behind? I've done it before. But this time I wouldn't be running alone. This time I'd be running towards something instead of away from it. She touched his face, memorizing the angles and scars and the way he looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world made of smoke. So promise me, no matter what happens tonight, if we survive, we leave. I promise. They held each other until Marco knocked on the door with the quiet urgency of someone who knew time was running out. Boss, we need to move. Lucien kissed Serena one last time, soft, gentle. Then he pulled away and walked toward the door where death waited with open arms. At the threshold, he turned back. I love you, Serena Vale. I love you too. Then he was gone, and Serena was left alone with 10 armed guards and the crushing weight of waiting to see if the man she loved would survive the night. Vincent DeMarco's plan was elegant in its brutality. While Lucien mobilized his forces expecting an attack on the penthouse, Vincent sent teams to 3 other Moretti properties simultaneously: a warehouse in Red Hook, a social club in Bensonhurst, an apartment building in Bay Ridge where Lucien and sister Angela lived. Diversionary tactics: split Lucien's resources, force him to choose which locations to defend, create chaos and confusion while the real attack happened somewhere he wouldn't expect: Castellano's diner, or what was left of it. The burned-out shell still stood on Mercer Street, blackened walls, collapsed roof, crime scene tape fluttering in the evening wind. No one had been back since the fire. No one had any reason to. Except Vincent knew Lucy. Yen knew he'd come to the diner eventually, to see the damage, to stand where his grandfather's legacy had turned to ash, to confront the reality of what his protection of Serena had cost. And when Lucien arrived, Vincent would be waiting. Lucien received the first reports around 9 p.m. Gunfire at the Red Hook warehouse, his men pinned down but holding. Then the social club. Then Angela's building, though she'd already been evacuated to a safe location hours earlier. He stood in the back of the Mercedes studying a map of Brooklyn on his phone while Marco drove and 3 other cars full of soldiers followed behind. "They're spreading us thin," Marco said. "Classic diversion." "I know." "So where's the real attack?" Lucien stared at the map, at the 3 locations under fire, at the penthouse where Serena waited under guard, at the burned-out shell of Castellano's diner marked on the screen like a wound that wouldn't heal. "The diner," he said quietly. Marco looked at him. "It's already destroyed." "Why would they?" "Because Vincent knows I'll come back to it eventually. Knows it means something, and he wants to be there when I do. Wants to kill me in the place my grandfather built. Make a statement. That's twisted." "That's Vincent." Lucien made a call. "Everyone converge on Castellanos, now. Leave skeleton crews at the other locations, but I want full force at the diner in 10 minutes. Marco took a hard left, tires screaming. "This could be exactly what he wants, drawing you to his killing ground." "I know, do it anyway." They arrived at Castellanos with 8 cars and 30 men who moved through the ruined diner like shadows with guns. The place looked like a corpse, blackened, hollowed out, reeking of smoke and destruction. Yellow police tape crisscrossed the entrance. No lights, no movement. Too quiet. Lucien stepped through what used to be the front door, glass crunching under his feet. Inside, the black and white tiles were scorched and cracked. The counter had collapsed. Booth cushions had melted into toxic puddles. Everything his grandfather built reduced to carbon and ash. "Lucien Moretti." The voice came from the back of the diner. Vincent DeMarco stepped out of the shadows, followed by 15 armed men who materialized from the ruins like ghosts solidifying into flesh. Lucien's soldiers raised their weapons. Vincent's men did the same. 30 guns pointed at 30 targets in a space that suddenly felt far too small. "You knew I'd come," Lucien said. "Of course. You're predictable when it comes to sentiment. Your grandfather's precious diner, your tragic little waitress. You care about things, Lucien. That's your weakness." Vincent walked forward slowly, hands in his pockets, completely at ease despite being surrounded by men who wanted him dead. "I spent 40 years learning not to care about anything. Makes decisions so much clearer." "Is that why you burned down a landmark?" "For clarity, I burned it down to prove a point. That your rules, your sacred ground, your grandfather's legacy, it's all just kindling. The only thing that matters in this city is power. And right now, I have more of it than you do." "You sure about that?" Vincent smiled, gestured around at the burned diner. "Your empire is crumbling. Your men are scattered across Brooklyn fighting fires. Your sister is in hiding, and your girlfriend—" He paused for effect. "She's sitting in a penthouse guarded by 10 men who won't be enough when I decide to take her." Lucien's finger moved to his trigger. Marco stepped forward, ready to start the war right here, but Vincent raised his hand. "Before we all die in this shithole, I want to give you one last chance. Walk away. Give up the girl. Acknowledge that I run this city now. Do that, And your people live. Your sister stays safe. You get to keep breathing. All you have to do is let Serena Vale go. No. No? Vincent's expression hardened. You'd rather die for her than live without her? Yes. That's pathetic. That's love. Lucien lowered his gun slightly, not surrendering, just shifting the conversation from violence to something more dangerous, truth. You spent 40 years learning not to care. Congratulations, you're powerful, untouchable, and completely alone. When you die, and you will die, probably tonight, no one will mourn you. No one will remember you as anything other than another gangster who killed enough people to call himself king for a while. Is that really the legacy you want? Vincent's smile vanished. Spare me the philosophy. It's not philosophy, it's reality. I spent my whole life trying to be like you, cold, calculating, building power by cutting away everything that made me human. And you know what that got me? Nothing. Just an empty penthouse and a reputation that terrified everyone, including myself. Then I met Serena. And for the first time, I understood what my grandfather was trying to build with this place. Not just neutral ground, but proof that we could be more than our worst impulses. That we could protect something fragile and beautiful in the middle of all this darkness. And look how that turned out. Vincent gestured at the ruins. Your protection meant nothing. Your precious diner is ash. And that girl you love? She's next. The gunshot came from nowhere. One of Vincent's men dropped, blood spreading across his chest. Then chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. The sound of gunfire in the confined space was deafening, a continuous roar that made thinking impossible. Lucien dove behind the remains of the counter while bullets chewed through what was left of the diner's walls. Marco appeared beside him, breathing hard. We're outnumbered. I know. Call for backup. Already did. 5 minutes out. 5 minutes might as well have been 5 hours. Lucien risked a glance over the counter, saw 3 of his men down, saw Vincent retreating toward the kitchen, protected by a wall of soldiers, saw the diner being destroyed for the second time in as many days. Then he saw something that made his blood freeze. Nathan Cole, standing in the doorway with a gun, looking lost and terrified, but also determined in the way desperate people get when they've already lost everything. Their eyes met across the chaos. Nathan raised his weapon. Lucien was faster. The first shot hit Nathan in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The second caught him in the chest. He collapsed in the doorway, blood pooling beneath him on the same tiles where Serena had bled months ago. Lucien felt nothing. No guilt, no triumph, just the cold efficiency of eliminating a threat. But the distraction cost him. Vincent's voice cut through the gunfire. Take Moretti alive. I want him breathing when I put a bullet in his head. Hands grabbed Lucien from behind. He fought, broke free, put 2 rounds into the nearest attacker. But more came. Too many. They swarmed him, dragged him down, pinned him against the scorched floor. Marco screamed something, a warning or a battle cry, but more gunfire drowned it out. Then silence. Not real silence, just the sudden absence of shooting that felt louder than the chaos before it. Ringing ears, smoke, the smell of cordite and blood. Lucien found himself on his knees with a gun pressed to the back of his head. Around him, his surviving men were in similar positions, 8 of them left out of 30, the rest dead or dying. Vincent walked over slowly, stood in front of Lucien, smiled. I told you, predictable. Lucien looked up at him. You won. Congratulations. Now what? Now I make an example. Show this city what happens to people who challenge me. Vincent pulled out his own gun, pressed it against Lucien's forehead. Any last words? Yeah, you forgot something. What's that? I'm not the one you should be worried about. The gunshot came from the doorway. Vincent staggered, blood spreading across his side. He turned, raising his weapon toward the source of the shot. Serena stood there, holding a gun with both hands, trembling so badly she could barely aim. She'd left the penthouse, somehow gotten past Marco's guards, somehow found a weapon, somehow made it to the diner just in time to save Lucien's life. She fired again. Missed. Vincent's men swung their weapons toward her. Lucien used the distraction, twisted away from the gun at his head, grabbed the wrist holding it, broke the arm at the elbow. The man screamed. Lucien took his gun and started shooting. 3 rounds, 3 bodies. Marco and the others followed Lucien's lead, broke free, fought back with the desperate ferocity of men who knew this was their last chance. The diner erupted into close-quarters combat, fists and bullets and broken bones. Vincent tried to reach Serena, but Lucien tackled him, and they went down hard on the ruined floor. They fought like animals. No technique, no strategy. Just two men trying to kill each other with whatever they could grab. Vincent got his hands around Lucien's throat. Lucien drove his thumbs into Vincent's eyes. Vincent screamed, "Let go!" Scrambled for a weapon, found one, aimed at Lucien's head. The gunshot echoed through the diner. But it wasn't Vincent who pulled the trigger. Serena stood 5 feet away, the gun in her hand still smoking. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock at what she'd just done. Vincent collapsed with a hole through his chest where his heart used to be. He died staring at the ceiling of Castellano's diner, probably wondering how a nobody waitress had been the one to end him. The remaining DeMarco soldiers fled, ran into the night pursued by Lucien's backup, finally arriving. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police would be here in minutes. Lucien pulled himself to his feet, looked at Serena. She was shaking so hard the gun slipped from her hands and clattered on the floor. "I killed him," she whispered. "I killed someone." Lucien crossed to her, pulled her close. "You saved me." "I killed him. I'm a murderer. You're a survivor. There's a difference." Marco appeared, blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. "Boss, we need to move. Cops are 3 minutes out." Lucien looked around at the carnage, at Nathan's body in the doorway, at Vincent's corpse cooling in the center of the diner, at the ruins of everything his grandfather had built. Then he looked at Serena. "We're leaving. Tonight. All of us who can walk. We disappear before the police arrive and this whole thing turns into a public nightmare." Marco nodded, started organizing the evacuation. The surviving soldiers limped toward the exits, supporting their wounded, leaving the dead behind. Lucien kept one arm around Serena as they walked out of Castellano's diner for the last time. Behind them, the building stood like a tombstone, marking the death of one world and the birth of another. 3 months later, Serena stood on a beach in Costa Rica watching the sun set over the Pacific in shades of orange and gold that looked almost peaceful. The ocean stretched to the horizon. Waves crashed against the shore in rhythmic patterns that had existed long before human violence and would continue long after. Seabirds called overhead. Palm trees swayed in the warm breeze. She wore a simple white dress. Her hair had grown longer, lighter from the sun. The scars on her face had faded to thin silver lines you'd only notice if you were looking for them. Behind her, a small house sat nestled between the jungle and the beach. Nothing fancy, just wood and stone and open windows that let the ocean breeze flow through. A place they'd bought with the last of Lucien's hidden money. A place where no one knew their names or their history. Footsteps in the sand behind her. Lucien appeared, carrying 2 bottles of beer frosted with condensation. He handed her one. They stood side by side watching the sunset without speaking. He looked different too. Lighter, somehow. The constant tension that had lived in his shoulders for years had eased. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a white t-shirt, no expensive suits or weapons hidden under tailored jackets. His hair had grown out slightly. He'd stopped shaving every day. He looked human, not a crime boss, not a killer, just a man watching a sunset with the woman he loved. "Marco called," he said finally. "Everything's settled. The DeMarcos fell apart after Vincent died. His lieutenants turned on each other fighting for control. My sister took over my old operations. She's doing well. Sends her love." "Will she be safe?" "Angela's smarter than I ever was. She'll be fine." He took a long drink of beer. The divorce papers came through too. Nathan's family signed everything. "You're legally free." Serena closed her eyes, felt the weight of that word. Free. She'd spent so long running that she'd forgotten what it felt like to stop, to breathe, to exist without constantly looking over her shoulder. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The power, the empire, being someone people feared." Lucien considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, when I wake up at 3 a.m. and can't sleep, I miss the clarity, the simple math of power and control, but then I look at you sleeping beside me and remember why we left, and I don't miss it at all anymore." "What do you miss then?" "Castellano's, the diner. Not as it was at the end, but—" He paused. "I miss what it represented. The idea that we could be better than our worst instincts, that neutral ground could exist, Serena leaned against him. We could build something like that here. Not a diner exactly, but a place. A restaurant maybe. Somewhere locals feel safe, where tourists come for good food and stay for the atmosphere. You'd want to do that? I've been thinking about it. I know how to wait tables. You know how to run a business even if it's not the kind of business you ran before. We could start small, build something together, something clean. Lucien wrapped his arm around her shoulders, kissed the top of her head. I like that idea. A lot. They finished their beers as the sun touched the horizon. The sky turned deeper shades of red and purple. Stars began appearing overhead like pinpricks in dark fabric. Do you think we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders? Serena asked quietly. Will we ever really feel safe? I don't know. Probably not completely, but maybe that's okay. Maybe safety isn't about never feeling afraid. Maybe it's about building a life worth protecting despite the fear. When did you become a philosopher? Since I fell in love with someone who makes me want to be more than I was. Serena turned in his arms, looked up at his face silhouetted against the dying light. I love you. I love you too. They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon. The world went dark for just a moment before the stars and moon took over, providing a different kind of light. Softer, gentler, the kind of light you could build a life around. 6 months after that, they opened a small restaurant called Vales. A simple place. 8 tables, fresh fish, local produce. Serena's mother's recipes she'd carried in her memory through every foster home and every nightmare. Lucien handled the business side with the same precision he'd once applied to criminal enterprises. Serena worked the floor, greeting customers, making them feel welcome, creating the kind of atmosphere where violence seemed impossible. Word spread slowly. Locals first, then tourists, then food bloggers who wrote about the hidden gem on the Costa Rican coast run by the mysterious American couple who never talked about their past. Business thrived. Not in the sense of making millions, but in the sense of sustainability, of building something that mattered to the community, of creating jobs for locals, of becoming part of the fabric of a place instead of predators taking from it. They worked long hours, came home exhausted, fell into bed tangled together, and slept without nightmares more nights than not. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes Serena woke up panicking, convinced Nathan was standing over her. Sometimes Lucien flinched at sudden sounds, his hand moving toward where his gun used to be. Sometimes they fought about money or decisions or the weight of everything they'd survived. But they fought together now, not against each other, not running in opposite directions, just 2 damaged people trying to build something whole from all their broken pieces. One evening, almost a year after they'd left Brooklyn, Serena found Lucien on the beach after closing. He sat in the sand staring at the ocean like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. She sat beside him, took his hand. You okay? Just thinking. About? About my grandfather, about Castellanos, about everything we left behind. He squeezed her hand. Do you think he'd be disappointed? That I ran instead of fighting? That I gave up the empire? Serena considered this seriously. I think he'd understand. He built that diner as neutral ground because he was tired of violence, tired of watching people destroy each other. Maybe walking away wasn't giving up. Maybe it was finally learning the lesson he'd been trying to teach all along. What lesson? That some things are worth more than power. That protecting what you love matters more than controlling what you fear. That being human is harder but better than being a monster. Lucien was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Serena's breath caught. He opened it. Inside sat a simple ring. Not expensive, not flashy, just a silver band with a small stone that caught the moonlight. I know we can't exactly have a traditional wedding, given that we're technically fugitives and you spent 6 years married to a man who nearly destroyed you, but he looked at her with eyes that held oceans of love and fear and hope. I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure you never doubt that you're loved, that you're safe, that you're worth protecting, not because you're weak, but because you're the strongest person I've ever known. Tears streamed down Serena's face. Serena Vale, will you marry me? Officially this time, in a ceremony on this beach with no ghosts watching, just us and the ocean and the promise that we'll keep choosing each other every day, no matter what. Yes, She could barely speak through the tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. They kissed as the waves crashed behind them, the sound like applause from the universe itself. 3 weeks later, they married on the beach at sunset with Marco and Angela as witnesses. Marco had flown in from New York, still running security for Angela's organization, but looking more relaxed than Serena had ever seen him. Angela hugged Lucien so tightly he couldn't breathe and whispered something in Italian that made him laugh and cry at the same time. The ceremony was brief. No officiant, just the four of them and words spoken from the heart. Lucien promised to love Serena in her darkness and her light, to never raise his hand to her in anger, to build a life where she felt safe enough to be herself completely. Serena promised to love Lucien despite his past, to see the man he was becoming instead of the monster he used to be, to choose him every day even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. They exchanged rings as the sun painted the sky in impossible colors, and when Marco pronounced them married, everyone cried. That night, lying in bed with Serena's head on his chest, Lucien spoke into the darkness. Do you think we deserved this? After everything we've done? Everything we've been? Do we deserve to be happy? Serena was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she spoke. I don't know if we deserve it, but I know we survived for it. We bled for it. We walked through hell and somehow came out the other side still capable of love. Maybe that's not the same as deserving. Maybe it's better. Maybe it means we earned it through every scar and every nightmare and every choice to keep breathing when giving up would have been easier. I like that answer. Good, because it's the only one I've got. They fell asleep tangled together, the ocean breathing outside their window, stars overhead bearing witness to two people who'd been broken by the world and somehow found each other in the wreckage. Years passed. The restaurant grew. They hired more staff, expanded the menu, became known not just for the food but for the way they treated employees, with respect and fair wages and the understanding that everyone had a story, everyone was running from something, everyone deserved a chance. They never had children. The weight of their past felt too heavy to pass on to another generation. But they fostered relationships with local kids, hired teenagers who needed work, mentored young people who reminded them of their younger selves, lost and angry and desperately searching for something to believe in. Serena never stopped flinching at unexpected touches. Lucien never stopped scanning rooms for exits and threats. But the panic attacks came less frequently. The nightmares faded. The scars became part of their story instead of the whole story. On their 5th anniversary, they stood on the same beach where they'd married. Older now, weathered by sun and time, but still standing. Do you ever regret it? Serena asked, leaving everything behind, becoming nobody. Lucien pulled her close. We're not nobody. We're someone to each other. That's more than I ever thought I'd have. Even with all the power you gave up? Especially because of that. He kissed her forehead. Power made me dangerous. You made me human. I'll take human over dangerous every time. They watched the sunset like they'd done 1,000 times before and would do 1,000 times again. Two people who'd survived impossible odds. Two people who'd chosen love over vengeance, peace over power, each other over everything. The city they'd left behind continued without them. Brooklyn's criminal landscape shifted and evolved. New players emerged. Old grudges faded. Castellano's diner remained a burned-out shell for years before finally being demolished and replaced with luxury condos that no one could afford. But sometimes, late at night when the city was quiet, people who'd known the old days would tell stories. About the diner that had been sacred ground. About the crime boss who gave up his empire for a waitress. About the woman who survived hell and somehow kept her humanity intact. The stories grew with each telling. Became legend. Became myth. Some said Lucien Moretti died in the fire. Some said he was killed by Vincent DeMarco's men. Some said he was still alive somewhere, watching over Brooklyn from the shadows. None of them knew the truth. That he was living in Costa Rica with the woman he loved, running a restaurant, serving fish tacos to tourists, and finding peace in the simple act of existing without destroying everyone around him. And Serena, who'd once believed she was worthless, who'd spent years learning to disappear, who'd survived more trauma than most people could imagine. She finally learned what it felt like to be seen. Not as damaged goods, not as a victim, not as someone's property, but as herself. Whole, imperfect, scarred, beautiful, alive. On a beach in Costa Rica, as the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, two people who'd been broken by the world held each other and remembered that survival sometimes looks like happiness, that healing sometimes looks like forgiveness, that love sometimes looks like two damaged souls choosing each other every single day despite knowing exactly what darkness lives inside them both. They'd never be perfect, they'd never be safe completely, but they'd be together. And after everything they'd survived, that was more than enough. The waves crashed against the shore. The stars appeared overhead. And somewhere between the violence they'd left behind and the peace they'd built together, Serena and Lucien found what neither of them had been looking for, but both had desperately needed all along. Home. Not a place, but a person. Someone who'd seen them at their worst and loved them anyway. Someone who'd fought beside them through hell and chosen to stay when the fighting was done. Someone who proved that even in the darkest corners of the world, light could still find a way to break through. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the people who've been broken the most are the ones who build the most beautiful things from the pieces.